Powder gang is small time, man. I'm a winner. I won the motherfucking lottery!
Bye.
It's finally time, the day we've all been waiting for. One big, comprehensive iceberg video brought to you by popular demand. See, back in May, Mason and I dropped 3 iceberg videos for New Vegas as well as Fallout 4. But we had several people ask to drop the New Vegas icebergs into one cohesive video, so that's exactly what we did. The Fallout community is growing, and fast, especially with the TV show's latest season, so if you're looking to gain some in-depth New Vegas lore, then you're in the right spot. And if you're an OG, well, we hope you enjoyed the video and learned some new things along the way with us. If there's something we missed, well, let us know in the comments section. We always appreciate learning from you guys. Anyway, kick your feet up, sit back, and enjoy the vid.
Starting us off with a simple one that a lot of people still don't know. Both the Cazadors and the Night Stalkers are not mutants that were created by radiation. So the Night Stalkers are these creepy looking snake dog hybrids that were actually cooked up before the war by Dr. Boris. He mixed rattlesnake and coyote DNA together. Why do that in the first place? Well, supposedly he did it to save rattlesnake DNA, thinking they were about to go extinct. But his memory's kind of fuzzy, and at one point he admits he might have done it just because of a dare from another scientist. Classic Big Mountain, right? Anyway, these things turned out to be way more dangerous than expected. When they were first created, they wiped out almost everyone working on the shipping department at the X8 Research Center. Only one guy named Skippy made it out alive. Even after that mess, another scientist, Dr. Figgis, figured they could still make use of them. So what does he do? He releases the Night Stalkers into the X8 testing area just to observe how they would behave, which was a bold move. After the bombs dropped, a bunch of these things got loose. They've been slithering and prowling their way across the Mojave ever since. Some even made it all the way to Baja. Cazadors are another lovely gift from the labs at Big Mountain. They were mutated and supersized thanks to a bunch of DNA experiments by none other than Dr. Boris. He swears the experiments happened on a Tuesday, maybe in May, probably 2003. He's not really sure. Originally, these lab-grown monstrosities were kept locked up in the Z14 DNA splicing lab, but surprise, surprise, that didn't last. A bunch of Cazadors ended up escaping Big Mountain Crater and started showing up in nearby places like the Mojave Wasteland and Zion Canyon. And once they were out, they multiplied fast. Boris still insists that they never escaped and they can't even reproduce, despite all the evidence saying otherwise. As they've spread across the wasteland, people have started calling them Cazadors or Cazadores, which probably came from Spanish-speaking survivors in the areas where they've popped up. And honestly, it fits.
Now this one's infamous among veteran New Vegas players, yet few places strike fear into players' hearts quite like the Deathclaw Promontory. On the Mojave's eastern fringe, just across the Colorado River, lies this unmarked location. There's no convenient quest marker here, no friendly NPC to guide you, just a faint dirt trail leading you straight into what might be the deadliest patch of terrain in the entire game. This spot is home to around 36 Deathclaws of all shapes and sizes. Alpha males, fearsome mothers, agile juveniles, and even baby Deathclaws, all crammed into one brutal, jagged maze of hills and cliffs. Unlike Quarry Junction's scattered chaos, these Deathclaws act as a tightly knit pack. If just one catches your scent, every single beast in the area charges simultaneously, acting as a cohesive unit of beasts. Players often face the daunting challenge of thinning the horde with explosives, creating a risky balance between survival and destruction. Yet despite this near certain doom, we can't help but feel drawn by some of the game's finest loot. Hidden among these bloodied rocks and beastly corpses are treasures worth every risk. Rare high-end weapons and the exclusive Remnants power armor. This armor set, typically only obtained through a questline, can be found here without the quest hassle, making it a tempting prize. Adding an eerie realism to the horrifying spot, Deathclaw Promontory sits exactly where Nevada's real-world promontory point lies, anchoring Fallout's ambush zone firmly into actual geography. For lore hunters, there's even the intriguing discovery of 3 Deathclaw eggs giving us a glimpse into a breeding ground right under our noses. We can't help but wonder if this spot will end up in Fallout's upcoming Season 2 release. In the gaming world, New Vegas is legendary. Not just for its gameplay and storytelling, or even the bugs that came with it when it rolled out, but for a notorious event known as the Metacritic scandal. Here's the crazy story behind the infamous 1% that cost Obsidian Entertainment dearly. When Obsidian partnered with Bethesda to develop New Vegas, the deal included a massive bonus, but only if the game achieved a Metascore of 85 or higher on Metacritic. Unbelievably, Fallout New Vegas narrowly missed that mark, landing at an 84, just one single percentage point short. This small margin meant the developers received none of the promised bonus, sparking endless controversy and conspiracy theories in the gaming community. Rumors quickly spread, with some players convinced that Bethesda deliberately rushed Obsidian to release the game prematurely, sabotaging its review scores out of spite. This theory was even more widespread considering the amount of cut content that never made it into the game, which if you haven't seen our first New Vegas Iceberg video, consider giving it a watch since we cover pieces of the cut content like the game's boundaries. However, Chris Avalon, one of New Vegas's key figures, has repeatedly dismissed these theories. He even praised Bethesda, highlighting how supportive they were during development. Still, fans can't help but wonder, why didn't Bethesda use a sliding bonus scale instead? A scale would have meant missing the target by just 1% wouldn't erase the entire bonus, only a fraction of it, making the sting far less severe. As Chris himself admitted, losing everything based on a single percentage point felt devastating. Ironically, despite this Metacritic miss, Fallout New Vegas was an incredible commercial success. Bethesda shipped over 5 million copies by early November 2010, generating more than $300 million from sales and digital downloads alone. Clearly, us fans adored the game, making the narrow miss on Metacritic even more bitter. But was it a conspiracy? Not quite, just a business deal gone awry.
Alright, so when you roll into the Tops Casino during the Ring-a-Ding-Ding quest, the first person you bump into is Swank. He's one of Benny's right-hand guys. Now if you play it smart and you pass a few speech checks, you can actually clue Swank in on what Benny's really up to. If you succeed, Swank basically lets you go upstairs to Benny's suite with all of your weapons, which is pretty helpful if things go sideways. But there's also this other way to actually convince Swank to your side. You can find some evidence to help your case, like Benny's distinctive lighter and his weird brand of cigarettes, which can then make Swank more willing to believe you. If you tell Swank that Benny's scheming behind Mr. House's back, he asks you what you want to do about it. If you tell him you're ready to handle it now, Swank sends Benny up to his room, basically setting him up for you. Once you've taken care of business, you can go back to Swank and he just straight up asks,
Is Benny taken care of yet?
You get one reply, yes, he's dead. Swank then gets hyped and says,
Guess that makes me the boss. Ring-a-ding.
It's surprising just how many ways Benny can be dealt with. It makes you wonder what New Vegas would have been like with another 1.5 years of development time. I'd be surprised if anyone hasn't seen the crashed UFO in New Vegas at this point, or at least heard of it. It was on almost all of the icebergs we came across, so we figured we'd throw it on. I'm assuming some people might have missed it because they don't take the Wild Wasteland trait at the beginning of the game. If you head up north of Horowitz Farmstead and a bit east of the Brooks Tumbleweed Ranch, right around where the mercenary camp usually is, you come across something pretty weird. Usually it's just the 3 mercenaries standing around a fire. But like I said, if you have Wild Wasteland, you'll actually find 3 aliens near a crashed recon craft. The ship is wrecked and you can't get inside. These aliens are the only ones in the game, and they look exactly like the ones from Fallout 3's Mothership Zeta DLC. 2 of them are armed with tri-beam laser rifles, so they're not just here to say hi. They will mess you up if you're not careful. But if you kill them, you do get to keep their alien blaster, which has probably the most rare ammo type resource in the entire game. Yes, the Tops has a pool. It's kind of hidden away, which is why people usually don't run into it. It's out back behind the casino. There's a little courtyard area and it's not huge, but it's got a nice vibe. There you'll find a pool right in the middle. There's also some palm trees scattered around and a brick wall enclosing the whole space. You'll usually find a few gamblers hanging out there, along with some of the chairmen just keeping an eye on things or they're chilling. It's a pretty relaxed spot compared to the inside. It's not the most in-depth thing on the iceberg, but it might surprise a few of you. It actually surprised me. I had no idea.
Let's talk about one of New Vegas's most underrated minigames, Caravan. It might not get as much hype as Witcher 3's Gwent, but Caravan is one of Fallout New Vegas's best kept secrets, and it's likely due to its complicating rules. I'm not saying the game is revolutionary by any means, I'm just saying it's relatively low key. You'll first catch wind of Caravan from a guy named Ringo in Goodsprings, who hands over a starter deck. Mostly Tops casino cards, though it's missing a king of clubs. From there, you're off scouring the Mojave for more cards, whether that's by trading with merchants, looting unlucky wanderers, or winning other minigames. To build a valid Caravan deck, you need 30 cards with no duplicates from the same set. Have a king of spades from set A and another from set B? No problem. 2 kings of spades from set A, and that's an illegal move within the game's rules. The game itself is a tug of war over 3 stacks called caravans, each aiming for a total of 21 to 26. You basically place cards in ascending or descending order, and face cards become your wild strategy pieces, boosting values or sabotaging your opponent's stacks. Once you've sold a caravan by locking in that 21 to 26 sweet spot, you've got a claim, but your opponent can still fight back with some clever plays. Bet big, and while the house doesn't make a fuss, your rival might raise you with NCR bills, Legion coins, you name it. Win 2 out of 3 caravans first, and the pot's yours. If you've never tried it, give it a shot. Caravan is a surprisingly deep card game hiding under the Wasteland's dust. And although it's not the most profound card game we've seen in RPGs, it's still worth trying if you have yet to touch it.
So, you feel like playing a game?
Here's something a lot of Fallout fans have wondered. Why can't you keep playing after the Battle of Hoover Dam? Well, originally Obsidian did consider post-game content, but it was scrapped for a surprising reason. According to the devs, per Eurogamer, we put a lot of effort into the ending slides. We know those slides are really popular with people, so we want to make sure there's a huge amount of variety and reactivity with that stuff. Initially, we talked about trying to support post-gameplay, but because the changes that can happen at the end of the game are pretty major, this is what it basically came down to. Either have the changes feel really major in the end slides and then have them not be very major after the end of the game, or make them really minor and not that impactful. Senior producer Jason Bergman added to Destructoid, quote, "We tell the full story of every one of your companions through the end of their lives. And it's weird to do all that and then jump back and say, okay, now you can keep going again," quote. The devs wanted the ending to actually mean something and have the story continue. It'd be kind of like finishing a novel and then trying to reopen it and write a few more chapters. The story's over and your impact has been sealed.
The legate is crowned as the new Caesar. He entered the Strip as though it was a military target, destroying anyone who resisted him.
In addition, a package courier found shot in the head near Good Springs has reportedly regained consciousness and made a full recovery. Now that's a delivery service you can count on.
Mr. New Vegas is an AI. This one's really easy to miss if you're just tuning in for the tunes, but it's officially confirmed. Mr. New Vegas, the smooth talking DJ you hear across the Mojave, isn't a real person at all. He's actually an artificial intelligence created by Mr. House himself before the bombs fell. Designed to be the voice of New Vegas, he's been broadcasting non-stop ever since. Calm, polite, and always weirdly upbeat no matter how bad things get out there. What makes this interesting is that the game never tells you this outright. There's no moment where the courier finds a robot or terminal that spills the beans, but a pre-release Bethesda blog casually drops the detail, calling him, quote, literally just a voice, quote. And a USA Today interview with Wayne Newton, who voices Mr. New Vegas, backs it up too. Wayne stated that Mr. New Vegas is interesting because he's just a voice on the radio. He has no body. He was created by Mr. House, so he's literally just a voice. He tells what's going on in the world and he's always upbeat, and he has some very bizarre lines. So if you didn't know, the rumors are confirmed. New Vegas is purely AI.
This one's not confirmed in-game, but it's one of those fan theories that just feels plausible enough to make you wonder. You'll find the Lonesome Drifter sitting alone by a billboard, guitar in hand, looking like a young, wandering Johnny Cash. When you talk to him, he mentions he's out looking for his father. A mysterious fella, he says. A stranger, even. And if you recruit him for the talent pool quest and pass a barter check, he gives you the Mysterious Magnum, a revolver that literally plays the mysterious stranger's theme music when drawn. That's not exactly subtle. Dig a little deeper and it gets even more interesting. In an old developer interview, Josh Sawyer mentioned that if he had more development time, they wanted to script an event where if you attacked the Lonesome Drifter, the mysterious stranger himself would show up and defend him. It never made it in, but the idea definitely adds fuel to the theory. Whether it's just a clever Easter egg type of scenario or a scrap story thread, the clues are all there. Maybe the Drifter's just a guy with a guitar. Or maybe he's got a little VATS-powered family legacy behind him. What do you think? Back when Fallout New Vegas launched, pre-ordering from different retailers actually scored you different gear packs. And while none of them were game-breaking, they definitely gave you a leg up in the Mojave. There were 4 in total, and let me just say that this was a peak video game buying experience. I kind of miss the days of having to choose where I'm having to drive in order to buy the game and feeling like I could go talk about it with friends at school. Back when lines around GameStop formed for highly anticipated games. But back to the story. GameStop gave you a classic pack with a patched up Vault 13 suit, a weathered 10mm pistol, and the iconic Vault 13 canteen to keep hydration in check. Amazon had the Tribal Pack, complete with Raider armor, a broad machete, and throwing spears. Steam and Walmart players got the Caravan Pack featuring lightweight leather armor, binoculars, and a sturdy shotgun built for the road. And finally, Best Buy gave you the Mercenary Pack with sleek metal armor and fast reloading grenade rifle, and enough medical supplies to keep your limbs intact after an encounter with a super mutant. Each pack had its own vibe, and while none were essential, they made those early hours in the Wasteland just feel a bit more personalized. We felt this one was worth mentioning since the video game buying experience has evolved over time, and many newer Fallout fans never got to experience buying New Vegas in the OG days. Two Bears High-Fiving is a tribal living in the Zion Canyon in the Honest Hearts DLC. If you've got the Wild Wasteland trait right before you meet Joshua Graham, this guy walks out of Angel Cave, pumps his fist in the air like he made some type of accomplishment, and then he casually just walks back inside. That's it. No epic speech, no quest, just his tribal fist-pumping glory. He spouts the usual dead horse one-liners, but what's the real story here? The character is a reference to a mod that changes one of the available options to Two Bears High-Fiving for the last Inkblot test during Ain't That a Kick in the Head. According to Josh Sawyer, this little moment was a team-wide decision. And honestly, it's a solid blink and you'll miss it Easter egg.
You must be the stranger I've been hearing about. Sorry, but I'm strictly forbidden from offering our tech to outsiders like yourself.
God damn.
Let's be real. New Vegas has a reputation system unlike anything else in the series. Every faction doesn't just love or hate you, they track you. Fame, infamy, neutrality, it all matters. And sometimes doing a little bit of everything unlocks something strange known as Wild Child. Honestly guys, it's kind of a cool status name now that I'm saying it. You get it when your reputation with a faction becomes so erratic, so contradictory, that they don't know whether to fear you, trust you, or just keep their distance. The in-game description puts it best saying, quote, "Your wild, seemingly capricious behavior leaves people scratching their heads in confusion and avoiding close contact," end quote. Most players write it off as a flavor title, but there's more going on here, especially with the Brotherhood of Steel. If you've ever tried to trade with the Knight, the Brotherhood Quartermaster, you'll know her inventory is locked behind reputation. Most people try to go full idolized to gain access to her full arsenal. That's the expected route. But the game offers a more unique method if you're labeled as a wild child or sitting at a mixed reputation. And in this case, she'll actually sell to you at cheaper prices. You lose access to her rarest gear, sure, but basic items are weirdly discounted. It's as if the Brotherhood doesn't quite know what to do with you. You're too unpredictable to be cut off entirely, but too dangerous to give full trust. So they offer you just enough to stay on your good side. It's a small detail in the scheme of the game, but one that reveals the nuance of the New Vegas reputation system. You don't have to be a saint or even a villain. Sometimes the best perks come from walking the line chaotically and unpredictably.
Please, sir, take pity on us. Free us, please. You think we can make it? You really do? Freedom!
There's a quiet killer build in Fallout New Vegas, one that doesn't rely on heavy weapons, power armor, or even brute force. Instead, it relies on something a lot of players overlook on the character creation screen. Admittedly, I'm the type of player who usually doesn't leverage the luck perk as much as I should. At first glance, luck seems like a throwaway stat. Maybe it helps in casinos and maybe it tweaks your crits a little, but most players dump it to boost strength or intelligence. If you start the game with luck at 9 and then layer on a few key perks and equipment, you can become a walking critical hit machine. First, take the finesse perk. It gives you a flat 5% to critical hit chance, effectively the same bonus as adding 5 points of luck. Then add better criticals, a perk that boosts your critical hit damage by 50%. Combine that with the first recon beret, which adds +1 perception, and more importantly another 5% crit chance. With luck at 9, finesse, and the beret, your character has an effective crit chance of 19% to 24% depending on the weapon. And that's before considering weapon-specific critical bonuses, VATS multipliers, or sneak attacks. And once you start stacking crits, it snowballs. You start melting enemies before they even realize they're in combat. Guns like the Cowboy Repeater, This Machine, or Rat Slayer suddenly become devastating. And if you're using VATS, I'm the type of player who doesn't focus on exact stat maxing, so layering luck with guns, apparel, and even more perks isn't something I've considered opting for on a playthrough. But I just might now.
You ever stumble into a cave in New Vegas and think, wow, this place seems chill, probably just a few bugs or coyotes, and then you're suddenly jumped by a rat the size of a small car. Yeah, that's the rodent of unusual size. These massive mutated rats are a hidden little feature you only find if you've taken the Wild Wasteland trait. And true to form, these aren't just any rats. They're a parody of classic rodents of unusual size from The Princess Bride.
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
You can find them in a couple of locations, the Brockflower Cave, the New Vegas sewers, and sometimes even in Vault 11. But only if you've got the Wild Wasteland active. And let me tell you, they're not just oversized background Easter eggs. Compared to the standard giant rats you might be used to, these guys are beefed up with higher HP, stronger attacks, and a much bigger model. It's kinda like Obsidian just clicked scale times 2 and let them loose in the wild. We have no background lore on these guys, and we don't really know why they exist canon-wise. Mostly it just seems to be a joke, clearly. We have talking toasters, stealth suit AIs with attitude, rats the size of bears, but one of the most bizarre, unsettling, and low-key tragic things you can encounter is a Brahmin skull named Antler, and it is worshipped like a god. You meet Antler in the Repcon test site, where you'll find a group of Nightkin who've taken over the facility. These Nightkin, if you're not familiar, are the stealth-obsessed super mutants who served under the Master back in Fallout 1 and 2. But the big twist is they've all been driven a little, or a lot, insane from overusing stealth boys. Constant cloaking eventually messes with their minds, and this place is basically one big psych ward without the nurses. Enter Davison, the Nightkin in charge. He's convinced that Antler, a literal bleached cow skull sitting on the table, is giving him divine orders. He doesn't make decisions without consulting Antler. He doesn't trust anyone who questions Antler. And if things go wrong, that's because you didn't listen to Antler. At first, it seemed kind of funny. A towering 7-foot-tall mutant taking commands from a skull. Classic Fallout absurdity, am I right? But then it gets darker. Davison isn't a joke character, he's tragic. He used to be part of something bigger. Now he's just wandering the Mojave with no purpose, no structure, and a mind cracked in half by tech his body wasn't meant to use long term. Antler isn't just a skull, it's his coping mechanism. During the Come Fly With Me quest, you can negotiate with Davison and the Nightkin to get them to leave Repcon peacefully. But to do that, you'll need to help them find missing stealth boys, or convince Davison through dialogue that continuing to follow Antler's orders will only lead to more violence. And if you do it right, he'll actually thank you and say that Antler agrees with your plan. I see Antler brought up a lot in theories about how maybe this thing is an actual god or a god speaking through it. And as we know, Fallout doesn't shy away from the eldritch lore that we get. Maybe it is a god speaking through the skull trying to help these super mutants. Even the meaning of Brahmin means it's a member of the highest Hindu caste, that of the priesthood. It's a very spiritual thing. But in reality, I think it's a way to showcase Davison's schizophrenic tendencies. He had to create a being superior to himself to help cope or control his own emotions. It's honestly deeper than you think.
Primm Slim at your service. Authentic cowpoke and official spokespot of the Vicky and Vance Casino and Museum. Yeehaw!
At first glance, Primm Slim is a joke character since Bro is literally a tour guide for the small-time museum in the Vicky and Vance Casino. Slim is a friendly, slow-talking Securitron with a cowboy hat and a busted-up programming routine. He's one of your options to become the new sheriff of Primm after the town falls into chaos. Would you ever think he could become the strongest NPC in the game? There's a hidden detail in New Vegas's code. Primm Slim's hit points scale with your level. As the courier levels up, so does Slim's health quietly and invisibly, until one day he's an absolute unit. By the time you reach level 40, Primm Slim has the same amount of HP as a legendary bloatfly from Old World Blues, one of the deadliest and tankiest enemies in the entire game. But what happens after level 40? Well, Slim just keeps scaling. His health keeps climbing, eventually giving him more hit points than any other NPC, enemy, or boss in the entire game. Obviously, he doesn't carry a fat man, and he's not even remotely akin to a Deathclaw, nor is he even hostile. So it's kinda cool that one of the strongest NPCs in the game is on your side. If your main concern is keeping the town safe, then this makes him canon-wise the best choice for sheriff. NCR's got politics, the Legion has even more politics. But Primm Slim? He's a literal tank with a badge and a hat. He doesn't feel pain, he doesn't feel fear or fatigue. So while the NCR may have troops and the Legion has zealots, just remember Primm. They have a Slim.
My leg!
To some players, Sergio doesn't exist. He's just a myth, a name dropped by the king in Freeside, an elusive hairstylist who supposedly resides in the king's school of impersonation. He's mentioned once after you use your favor to officially join the kings. The king says, go find Sergio. He'll hook you up with the proper look. So then you go and search for Sergio, the Zoolander of the Waste, but there's nobody out there that goes by such a name. To complicate things even further, there's also no marker and no dialogue change after this combo with the king. So you wander the first floor of the king's school like a lost soul, wondering if you missed something because there's no one in the southern room where he's supposed to be. Just empty chairs, empty air, and a dream of sideburns and a soul patch. What makes this even weirder is that Sergio does exist in the game's files. He's a fully voiced NPC. He can change your hairstyle, your beard, and even your hair color. He carries a badass unique straight razor, and he's one of only 2 characters in the entire game, besides Doc Mitchell and the Sync's Autodoc, who can alter the courier's appearance post-creation. This beautician is practically a god in New Vegas with such power, and yet half the time he just doesn't spawn. No trigger activates him. Some players report that he'll only show up if you kill off most of the other kings, including the king himself, which I vetted when looking up Sergio's bugs. This solution makes zero sense narratively, but somehow causes the game to reload the area with Sergio active. And even if you do everything right, like finish the king's questline, earn the favor, join the gang, Sergio might still be gone. Some PC players have spawned him manually using console commands, which proves he exists again, but even then, his AI is sometimes broken or his dialogue won't trigger properly. Chances are you've at least heard of, or maybe even proudly own, the legendary Prima Official Game Guide. Authored by David S.J. Hodgson, who also crafted the official guide for Fallout 3, this guidebook isn't just a simple walkthrough. It's a treasure trove of detailed lore, item descriptions, maps, character backstories, and hidden secrets of the Mojave itself. The collector's edition hardcover is particularly sought after, boosting an additional 32 pages filled with fascinating concept art and in-depth details about New Vegas's factions and settings. But here's where things get intriguing. Despite its incredible usefulness and beautiful presentation, the guide isn't perfect. Eagle-eyed players quickly notice some curious inconsistencies between the guide and the actual game itself. For example, during the quest My Kind of Town, the guide incorrectly states you'll need a barter skill of 50 to persuade Major Knight to assign more troops to Primm. In reality, the game only asks for a barter skill of 20. Similarly, the guide mistakenly involves powder gangers in the quest Hard Luck Blues, despite them having no actual connection to the quest. Smaller errors also pop up too, like referring to Interstate 15 near Sloan interchangeably as the Long 19 and Long 95, or stating that using Doc Mitchell's chemistry set requires a speech skill of 25, when in fact it calls for a science skill of 25. But let's be honest, these errors don't take away from the coolness of owning such a guide. In fact, they might even enhance its status. Today, having an official strategy guide for Fallout New Vegas is more than just practical, it's a badge of honor, proof that you've walked the Mojave in a uniquely old school style. As for our take on the matter, I believe pieces like Doc's chemistry set calling for speech versus science skills was an unintentional editing error, while other pieces such as the small inconsistencies in quest details could be due to cut content, potentially seeing that the fullness of the game wasn't ever truly released. What are your thoughts? New Vegas is full of surprises, including cut content where you can hear your companions scream and shriek in terror as their bodies are lit aflame. These immolation screams, fortunately or unfortunately, never quite made it into the game. Deep within New Vegas's unused game files lies audio that's unsettling. These audio files include distressing screams and shrieks of your trusted companions, recorded specifically for when they're tragically set ablaze during combat. Imagine the visceral horror of hearing Boone, Veronica, or even Rex howling in agony as flames engulf their bodies. Sounds that would add a disturbingly realistic element to the brutality of the already brutal game. I mean, come on, we already have the crucifixions and slaves, they may as well have added this too. Although these sounds were ultimately excluded from the final release, they remain hidden in the game's code. The discovery of these unused audio files has become legendary within the Fallout community if you know where to look. But I figured I'd let their screams play out in a few seconds here, and you could tell me which actor or actress did it best.
So we all know old lady Gibson, right? The sweet old woman who runs the scrapyard near Novak. She comes off as this harmless trader just living her best retired life. But what if she's not as innocent as she seems? Here's where things get weird. Not too far from her scrapyard, up near the mountain, there's this little unmarked spot called Gibson's Shack. You actually go there during Veronica's companion quest. Now inside the shack, you'll find a skeleton and a full-on murder scene. Now yeah, finding a dead body in the Mojave isn't exactly shocking, but this one's different. The shack has her name on it. It's literally called Gibson's Shack.
Well, I'll give you a hint. They used to just call me Gibson. I hope you can figure out the rest.
That does feel intentional, and I really don't think the devs named it that by accident. So that begs the question, if the shack used to belong to old lady Gibson, why isn't she living there now? And why is there a dead body inside? Well, there are apparently multiple theories on this one. What if the skeleton is the real Gibson, and the woman at the scrapyard is someone else entirely, an imposter? Someone pretending to be her, maybe to take over the scrapyard or just blend in. It would explain why she's living out there instead of in the shack with her name on it. Or maybe it's her late husband that she talks about. She could have murdered him and then left him in that shack. This one has a little more plausibility in my opinion, as you can actually find a severed finger in there, implying that this guy wasn't a good guy, especially if you've played Fallout 3. In that game, you can find a perk that drops fingers on bad characters when you kill them. You then give them to the regulators who will pay you caps for the fingers, and then it gives you positive karma. So maybe her husband wasn't a good guy and she took care of him. There's also the fact that Elijah also used the shack at some point. Maybe he's tied up in the story in some way. All in all, it's just kind of strange. Let's talk about Victor, that overly friendly cowboy robot you meet at the start of the game. He's hanging around Good Springs, keeping an eye on things for Mr. House as one of his remote scout bots. At first, he just seems like a helpful old-timey robot who saves your life and points you in the right direction. But he actually has a bit more going on, especially during the Ghost Town gunfight quest. You guys know the story by now. The Powder Gangers show up and get kicked out, which places you in the middle of the two factions. In this instance, you need to side with the town. You can then recruit the townsfolk to actually join in the upcoming fight. Now here's where Victor comes in again. You can ask him to join the fight and he'll say yes.
Trouble with rustlers, huh? Count me in, partner. Those varmints will be running home with their tails between their legs soon enough.
But when the Powder Gangers roll in, he ghosts you. He doesn't show up at all.
Howdy, partner. So when do the rustlers show up? Now just hold on. I meant it when I said I'd help you. Guess I must have dozed off. That's never happened before.
If you've got at least 25 in science, you can ask him about it afterward.
All right, but put everything back the way you found it. Override? That can't be right. Probably just a malfunctioning tube somewhere. I truly am sorry I couldn't help you, partner. Was there something else you wanted to talk about?
Turns out he was remotely shut down. He'll even say it was a command he's never heard before, which is kind of suspicious considering who he works for. Was House testing us? Did he want to see if we could handle ourselves? It's just weird that he would send Victor in the first place to watch us and then not intervene.
If you ever ventured into the Mojave searching for challenging beast to tackle, you've likely run into the fire gecko, a creature known for its scorching breath. But did you know there's an even bigger, meaner version lurking in the game's code? Gojira, or simply Gecko if you spawn it via console command, is 3 times bigger, sporting a terrifying fire gecko model the size of a super mutant behemoth. By using the following console command, you can bring this gigantic gecko to life. Be forewarned though, he's a big sumbitch boasting 8000 HP and a unique Gojira flame with a base damage of 400 and a DPS of 3200. Practically anything standing near this beast is done for in seconds. Although it carries the name Gojira, the original Japanese name for Godzilla, this titan was never intended to roam freely in-game. According to various sources, Seth, a developer, created Gojira just for fun. In the early stages of the game's development, he apparently unleashed it on Camp McCarran to watch it terrorize NCR troops. This Godzilla would have been game-breaking. It trumps every major foe, including the X-42 giant Robo-Scorpion, the legendary Deathclaw, and the legendary Bloatfly. It is so formidable that a single flame breath attack can annihilate entire squads of enemies. Even the most feared bosses in the game crumble in seconds against it. Essentially, Gojira tips the scales of difficulty so severely that keeping it in the base game could have shattered game balance. Gojira has cemented its place in New Vegas legend as a stress test creature that was never meant to see the light of day. Beneath the glitz and neon of New Vegas, there's something a little more hidden, and a little more real. The Mojave Wasteland is laced with an extensive underground sewer system, accessible from manholes scattered around the map. These tunnels connect various parts of the city and serve as a sort of shadowy underbelly of New Vegas. You'll find feral ghouls, old maintenance rooms, and even scavengers down there. Ultimately, there's not a ton down here in terms of in-game assets, but what's wild is how closely this mirrors real-life Las Vegas. Underneath the actual strip, there's a massive network of storm drainage tunnels originally built to prevent flash floods in the desert, which occur quite often in monsoon season. Over time, these tunnels became known as the Homeless Tunnels, a hidden community where hundreds of people live off-grid, shielded from the brutal summer sun and the tourist surface world above. There's basically an entire economy in the city's underbelly, but we won't dive into that in this video. The point is this. In New Vegas, these underground routes reflect the duality, the city of lights built on top of a forgotten space filled with danger, survival, and people trying to carve out a life in the shadows. It's a subtle detail, but it shows just how deeply New Vegas was rooted in the real world it's loosely based on.
Finding it though, that's not the hard part. It's letting go.
Most players finish Dead Money by defying Father Elijah and escaping the Sierra Madre with their life, and maybe a few gold bars if they're clever. But there's a far more sinister and lesser known path hidden in the DLC. You can actually side with Father Elijah and help him unleash the Cloud and his hologram army across the Mojave. This ending is tucked away in the game's files and narration that was fully voiced and written by the devs. If you go along with Elijah's plan, the Mojave descends into a kind of apocalyptic second end of the world scenario.
In the years that followed, the legend of the Sierra Madre faded, and there were no new visitors to the city. Years later, when a mysterious blood-red cloud began to roll across the Mojave, then west toward the Republic, no one knew where it had come from. Only that it brought death in its wake. Attempts to find the source of the toxic cloud failed. The Mojave was cut off. Through the cloud, lights were seen from Helios 1. There were stories of ghosts immune to gunfire who struck down anyone they saw with rays of light. The last chapter of the Mojave came when a modified Repcon rocket struck Hoover Dam, releasing a blood-red cloud, killing all stationed there. All attempts to penetrate the cloud and retake the dam failed, and both the NCR and Legion finally turned away from it, citing the place as cursed. In the years that followed, the legend of the Sierra Madre faded, and there were no new visitors to the city. Only 2 remained alive in the depths of the cloud at the Sierra Madre, waiting for their new world to begin again.
The epilogue describes a blood-red cloud slowly rolling west from the Sierra Madre, swallowing everything in its path. The NCR patrols vanish. Helios 1 lights up with deadly beams, and rumors spread of a ghost immune to gunfire. The holograms now roaming the Mojave. Eventually, a modified Repcon rocket hits Hoover Dam, unleashing the cloud and wiping out all who remain. The NCR and Legion abandon the region, declaring it cursed. In the end, only 2 people survive, you and Father Elijah. sealed away in the toxic heart of the Sierra Madre, waiting for your new world to begin. It's one of the darkest possible futures in the Fallout universe, and it shows just how far the writing in Dead Money was willing to go, if you were willing to follow it into madness. You didn't think we'd only give one of the alternate endings to Dead Money, did you? If you get too greedy, if you give in to the siren song of the Sierra Madre's vault and fail to escape, you unlock one of the darkest and most philosophical endings in the entire series. In this rarely seen outcome, the courier becomes trapped inside the Sierra Madre vault, sealed forever behind layers of pre-war security, gold, and desperation. Over time, they die alone, entombed beneath the casino. But that's not where this story ends. The Sierra Madre doesn't forget them. In a final twist, the casino's systems create a new hologram, a flickering specter known in your own image. Originally intended for someone else, it now becomes a walking, glowing echo of the person who came seeking treasure and never left. The line hits really hard, quote, "a means of allowing even the dead to begin again," end quote. Some fans interpret this ending as the courier being immortalized by the Sierra Madre, not remembered but repurposed. Others see it as a metaphor for greed, obsession, or the danger of chasing legacy in a world that has no room for it anymore. Either way, it means that you become a ghost, a pre-programmed puppet trapped in a gilded tomb, doomed to patrol the halls of a place that feeds on hope and memory. You don't get credits, no parade, no resolution, just flickering blue light and an eternity of silence.
The courier, lured by the promise of the Sierra Madre, could not escape. Once inside the vault, the casino did not let go. When the courier finally passed away, the casino created a new hologram to walk with the other ghosts that filled its casino. It was a pre-programmed homage intended for another. It assumed a new meaning in the likeness of the courier, a means of allowing even the dead to begin again.
Ever wonder what lies past the invisible walls of the Mojave? Well, if you break free of the map's borders, you'll find something strange. 15 to 20 minutes worth of fully rendered terrain, complete with hills, dried riverbeds, winding paths, and even a few scattered ruins. What's odd is that none of this land is used in the main game or any of the DLCs. There's no quests, no enemies, no markers, just an eerily quiet, detailed geography that serves no immediate purpose. It's as if the developers were planning something out there and then abandoned it. Or maybe it was meant to sell the illusion of an open world you can't fully reach. Some fans believe it was intended for cut content, maybe an early NCR outpost or a planned DLC that was never realized. Others think that it was just there to make the Mojave feel bigger and more real. The most likely reason I could tell you from research is that the game was simply supposed to be bigger and was designed to be more scaled, but we never got that bigger version. Whatever the reason is, it adds a surreal, liminal feel when you explore it, like walking into the backstage of the game's reality. If you've ever wandered into the Vicky and Vance casino early in New Vegas and wondered why nothing seems to happen, like no gambling, no working cashier, no action, you're not alone. A lot of players assume it's just an unfinished or broken area, but it's actually working exactly as intended. It just takes a lot of patience. The casino, named after the Bonnie and Clyde inspired duo Vicky and Vance, was once Primm's big draw, Las Vegas on a budget. But after the Powder Gangers overran the town and killed the sheriff, the residents locked themselves inside the casino for safety, and then all the gambling operations shut down. So here's the cool part. After completing the quest My Kind of Town and installing a new sheriff, the casino doesn't just magically reopen. You have to wait in-game for at least 1 to 2 days. Then a scripted event triggers. A group of bumbling NCR deserters try to take over the casino, and then you'll have to deal with them. After that, wait 3 more in-game days, and finally the casino floor comes back to life. The slot machines will activate, the cashier opens up, and you can finally gamble your caps away under the neon lights. It's one of those mechanics that flies under the radar for most players, especially because there's no quest marker or formal objective pointing you to wait. But if you give it time, the Vicky and Vance does reopen, and it becomes one of the earliest functioning casinos you can access in the game.
If you've ever been tuned into Radio New Vegas and heard Mr. New Vegas casually mention reports of a large object or creature spotted in the waters of Lake Mead, you might have thought you were hearing things, but no, you weren't. There's a real in-game broadcast describing grainy, underexposed photos of something massive lurking beneath the lake's surface, New Vegas's own Mojave Nessie. After completing the quest Valere, where the courier helps the boomers raise a pre-war bomber from the bottom of Lake Mead, Mr. New Vegas returns with yet another broadcast. This time, he reports sightings of a strange creature within the lake, but chalks it up to Wastelanders misidentifying the recently surfaced plane. Still, that hasn't stopped fans and in-game myth hunters from taking the story seriously. The idea of something ancient, mutated, or unnatural living beneath the calm waters of Lake Mead taps right into the post-apocalyptic folklore of the Wasteland. Whether it's a clever narrative red herring or the start of something deeper Obsidian never followed up on, the Lake Mead monster remains one of New Vegas's most subtle and strangely believable urban legends. Tucked away in the far north of the Mojave, just south of Nellis Air Force Base, there's a strange, half-finished location that never quite made it into the final version of New Vegas. Known only as Underpass, it was originally planned to be a small settlement with its own mayor, quest lines, citizens, and a malfunctioning water purifier. In the final game, it's little more than a quiet, barren area filled with mad Brahmin, but the leftover data tells a much deeper story. Game files reveal that Underpass had a full faction, 6 named citizens, and a mayor named Meg Reynolds, complete with early voice dialogue and AI packages for sleeping and wandering. One notable resident was Carlisle St. Clair III, a character who doesn't quite fit in and is even mentioned in the Beyond the Beef quest flowchart in the game's official guide. You were originally supposed to track him down in Underpass as part of the quest. There's also a quest stub called V Freeform Underpass, which involved fixing the town's water purifier. Scripted message boxes like the Underpass water repaired message still exist, even though the purifier itself is missing. There's also a strange ranch house nearby, stocked with maize and moonshine stills, all of it marked as property of the now defunct Underpass faction. If you try to enter it with the original NPCs still enabled, they'd actually turn hostile on you. By the time New Vegas shipped, most of Underpass had been stripped down, and the area was seemingly repurposed by simply dropping in some mad Brahmin to fill the empty space. But the ghost of a full town, complete with politics, problems, and side quests, is still there in the game's DNA. One thing is for certain, we'd all die for Doc Mitchell. What you may have not considered before is that depending on your player's stats that you boost, Doc Mitchell will elicit a different phrase. I won't try and do voice work for what he says because nobody can deliver it quite like Doc. So sit back and enjoy.
Surprised anybody'd want to tangle with you. Heck, you could go Deathclaw hunting with a switch. Nothing gets by you, huh? Could've used you when I lost my keys last month. I guess that explains how you're still alive. You're built solid as an oak. Good to see them bullets didn't affect your charm none. Look at that. Maybe them bullets done your brain some good. Most patients don't get out of bed after being shot and then move like they was in perfect control. You're unusual, I'll say that. With luck like yours, I'm surprised them bullets didn't just turn right around and climb back into the gun.
The fort might be already one of the more unsettling places in New Vegas due to its slaves and crucifixions, but what's really weird is how much content was planned for the Legion and was quietly cut. For starters, there was a scrap quest involving poisoned meat tied to a character named Siri, a slave girl who would have been found near a Brahmin pen. The player could investigate a diseased Brahmin, convince Siri to give them the meat, and then you could use it to poison the Legion's stew. Messages like these still exist in the files, and there's even dialogue from a Nightkin reacting to the aftermath, saying head voices wonder why bulldoggies die, hinting at a slow infectious spread. Sadly, there's no finished script to actually carry out the poisoning. It was all left half built, with items like infected Brahmin meat even being shuffled over to the Ultralux later. Even the fort itself was meant to be larger. There's clear nav meshing and pathing that suggests the player could once explore the outer tent camp, not just the gated area. Slaves were supposed to carry supplies between the two, walking physical paths rather than just teleporting in and out of existence. And then there's Benny. Originally, once captured by Caesar, he was going to be locked in a literal cage. There are scripts and cut dialogue that support this, including an unused encounter where if he was freed, he would sneak up on you using a stealth boy. He'd then confront you and he'd open fire. No talking him down, just a final showdown. That entire sequence was scrapped, probably to keep Benny's fate more open-ended, but the leftovers are still there. Down to the mismatch between the voice lines and subtitles where he was supposed to say, "Thanks for getting me out of that cage." Then you have this file called Fort Shells Created, which suggests at one point you could forge phosphorus shells, possibly for the howitzer, maybe as part of a Legion artillery upgrade that never materialized. All in all, the fort was meant to be more than just a static hub. It was supposed to feel alive, dirty, and dangerous, but what was left out might have made it truly unforgettable. Let's talk about one of the wildest mobility exploits in all of New Vegas, reload dashing. If you've never seen it in action, imagine blasting across the Mojave like you've strapped a makeshift propulsion system to your back, using nothing but a revolver and some ammo swapping. Here's how it works. Step 1, you need a .357 Magnum revolver, and at least 2 different ammo types for it. Make sure the .357 is at the top of your weapon list, and this part's key, have the weapons tab open last in your Pip-Boy. Now when you're ready, equip the revolver, hold forward, and then quickly switch ammo using your hotkey. And then spam the Pip-Boy button during the reload animation. While still holding forward, unequip the revolver from the weapons tab, exit the Pip-Boy, and there you have it. You rocket forward, sometimes pretty violently. You'll skip terrain, you'll clip geometry, and if you're lucky or unlucky, launching so high up you die on impact. But even that can be mitigated if you pause and save mid-air and then reload the save to cancel the fall damage. But here's where the theory comes into play. Despite sounding like a janky animation exploit, some people actually believe reload dashing was intentional. It's not officially documented, of course, but maybe it was designed to be discovered. It kind of reminds me of Halo 2's super bounces, or the obscure Mario 64 wall clips, like the glitches that feel too perfect, too repeatable to be entirely accidental. The setup is specific. The animation timing has to sync up just right, and you have to be in the right menu with the right gun, the right ammo, and the right momentum. It's not the kind of bug that just happens by accident, and it feels almost like a secret speedrun tech built in for those who look deep enough. Obsidian, of course, never confirmed it. But in a game overflowing with layered systems, overlapping scripts, and weird physics interactions, sometimes what looks like a glitch feels more like a hidden mechanic. So is reload dashing a bug, a happy accident as Bob Ross would say, or one of the best kept secrets in the Mojave? You tell me. Before Red Dead Redemption 2 had us drunkenly screaming Lenny across the saloon,
"Been looking all over for you, Lenny."
New Vegas already had its own version of this now classic RPG drinking challenge, but it's so relatively hidden that most players never even knew it existed. In the You Can Depend on Me questline, there's a secret mini event tied to Cass, the owner of the Cassidy Caravans and all-around whiskey enthusiast. This can only be activated before recruiting her. The premise is simple. You're trying to buy out Cass's caravan on behalf of the Crimson Caravan Company, but she's not going to hand over the business she built from scratch. This takes finesse. It takes persuasion. It takes a barter skill of 75. If you got the numbers, Cass will propose an old-fashioned way to settle things.
You challenging me? Serious now. All right, you come here armed with whiskey. We'll make a sport of it. And none of that radioactive shit. I'm talking whiskey, not Dixon whiskey. Whiskey.
And just like that, you've triggered Cass's Whiskey Challenge, which is a secret drinking contest most people never experience, as it's being locked behind a high skill gate in a very specific dialogue tree. The rules are simple. You provide the 12 bottles of whiskey, and then you go drink for drink with Cass. The outcome's pretty cool in that it depends on your endurance stat. If your endurance is 8 or higher, you barely beat her, earning her respect and the deed. With 10 endurance, you crush her. She's stunned, humiliated, and forced to admit she's been thoroughly out-drunk. But if your endurance is 7 or less, you lose. Cass will wipe the floor with you, but she still hands over the deed, either out of pity or admiration for your effort. No matter what, the deal goes through. But the flavor text, the unique dialogue, and the entire Whiskey Challenge holotape that gets added to your quest log is all gated behind that 75 barter check. Miss it and you'll never know it existed, which is usually how it goes for most playthroughs. Maybe it's not as wild as the Lenny mission in Red Dead, but this game predates it by almost a decade, so it's pretty sweet to see it for its time.
No one in town knows that I know what happened to my wife. Best they never know. or the Legion will be after me next.
We all know Craig Boone, former NCR 1st Recon sniper, haunted by the guilt of sending his wife to her death. He pulled the trigger himself, hoping to spare her a worse fate at the hands of Caesar's Legion. But what if there's more to that shot? Some players believe Boone didn't just kill Carla. He used it using the Gobi campaign scout rifle, an incredibly rare, high-powered sniper rifle locked away in a footlocker at a sniping perch in the far east of the Mojave Wasteland. The theory goes like this. Boone trained in stealth and recon and wouldn't have just stood out in the open when his wife was handed over to the Legion. He'd have picked a vantage point, a sniper's nest, maybe the very one located near Cottonwood Cove, overlooking the Legion camp where she was taken. The coordinates match a field report from Camp McCarran that reads, "A sniper nest has been successfully set up near Cottonwood Cove. The position is close to the enemy camp. Upon completing the objective, get out as soon as flamingly possible." It's possible that this nest was Boone's, that this mission, unnamed in detail, was personal. If Boone used the Gobi rifle, one of the most precise scoped weapons in the game, it would explain both the emotional weight and the physical distance of the moment. He never had to see her up close, just a figure in his crosshairs. One final act of mercy, and afterward, he couldn't bear to keep it anymore, so he locks the rifle away, far from Novak, far from memory, maybe hoping no one ever finds it. But if the player does, and gives it back to him, it adds another layer of emotional closure that goes completely unspoken. Or it could be a dick move. Like, just imagine giving the sniper back to him like, "Hey Boone, something tells me you know your way around this rifle." But of course, there's doubt. That same Camp McCarran note mentions no weaponry was left at the sniper nest, just bedding and supplies. The implication is that whoever was assigned there brought their own gear and left with it. The coordinates might suggest proximity to Boone's mission, but not necessarily a link. So did Boone use the Gobi campaign rifle to kill Carla? I guess it wouldn't be the strangest thing to imagine a man like Boone bearing his past one bullet at a time.
And one more thing, we shouldn't speak again. Not until it's over.
If you've ever played New Vegas, and you likely have considering you're watching this, you probably remember needing a special power armor training perk just to wear the iconic steel suits of destruction. You grind Brotherhood quests, run errands, and finally you get certified to stomp across the Mojave in your own personal tank of a suit. But allow me to let you in on a fun fact that you may have never considered. You're the only poor bastard who needs it. Your companions? Nope. Even an aging ghoul mechanic with no formal Brotherhood training can wear a full suit of power armor without hesitation. Veronica? Sure, she was Brotherhood. But Boone? Arcade? Even random fiends can be spotted shambling around in salvaged power armor with zero explanation as to how they are not collapsing under the sheer weight of it. Turns out, not all power armor in New Vegas even counts as real power armor. Take the NCR salvage power armor, the kind seen worn by NCR heavy troopers. It doesn't require any training at all because the joint servos have been removed. It's more like heavy football padding than a mechanized exosuit. It looks intimidating, but functionally you're just sweating in a metal box with no assistive strength. And yet, that doesn't explain everything. Because when you get legit Brotherhood or Enclave power armor, suits that do have active servos and power assisted mobility, the courier can't even move in them without training. The game simply locks you out. That is, until you complete Still in the Dark and earn the Brotherhood's trust, or finish the quest with the Enclave remnants. Then and only then do you magically know how to operate the suit, even though other characters with far less experience seem to do just fine. Was this a gameplay gate, or maybe even a balancing mechanic? It could be just an inconsistency that snuck past Q&A. Some fans argue it's a leftover from Fallout 3 where power armor training was a big deal. But in New Vegas, it starts to feel more like an arbitrary wall, especially when your 200-year-old ghoul friend casually slips into Enclave tech. At the end of the day, the courier might be a walking arsenal, but apparently, he needs to be taught how to walk in bigger boots.
When you get to the Nellis Air Force Base in the game, you'll run across old P at the Boomer Museum, where he'll give you a little tour on the Boomer's past. During his dialogue options, you'll get the option to ask him how the howitzers ended up on the Air Force Base. I'm not sure why we asked this, honestly. I'm not a gun expert, so I'm sure someone in the comments could explain, but I did do some slight research, and howitzers can definitely target aerial objects. Mostly slow moving stuff, but it is possible. So wouldn't howitzers be a thing on an Air Force base? I don't know. Anyways, that's not what this is about. I want you to listen to his response.
You're right, they weren't here when we discovered Nellis. We found the guns at a huge weapon depot called Area 2, many miles from here.
Did you catch it? This is the only mention of it in the entire game. Area 2. A lot of people at first hearing this assume that this might be a reference to Area 51, which I don't blame you. I thought the same thing, and it is odd that we never do get mentions of any Area 51 in the entire game. And that's like a big piece of Nevada's history. But Area 2 is also mentioned one more time briefly outside of the game. In the Fallout New Vegas official game guide, it states, 50 years ago, a group of Fallout 34's dissidents struck out on their own and started using Nellis as a base. Over a long period of time, they eventually decided to call Nellis their home. They learned a great deal of information from the records at Nellis and used that information to open the weapons storehouses at currently unknown locations called Area 2 and the Hawthorne Army Depot. The result of their efforts was an enormous stockpile of heavy ordnance, artillery, and small nuclear weapons. So what even is Area 2? If you've ever looked into the Nevada test site, or what's now called the Nevada National Security Site, you might have come across something called Area 2. It's about 65 miles northwest of Las Vegas and was one of the key zones used during the Cold War for US nuclear weapons testing. In fact, 144 nuclear tests happened right there, most of them above ground, back in the 50s and early 60s before the US signed a treaty to stop atmospheric detonations. The place is still scarred and has craters from those explosions, and some of them are even visible today. Nowadays, Area 2 isn't actually used for any nuclear tests anymore, but it still sees activity mostly for national security experiments, emergency response training, and stuff that's, let's just say, still very classified. So while it's not as famous as Area 51, Area 2 does have its own explosive history. The place is not reachable in the game, but it's still pretty cool to hear about it. So once again guys, this is not a reference to Area 51, but it is a reference to the real life Area 2.
If you watched our other Fallout New Vegas Icebergs, then you've already heard why the devs allegedly chose ending game slides and didn't allow players to go back into the Mojave and continue to play a post-game sequence. But if you haven't watched it, just know that I fully believe ending slides were chosen due to developmental time constraints. I mean, there's entire sections of Wasteland you can explore outside game boundaries simply because the devs never got to it. So in my opinion, ending slides were the path of least resistance to get the game published. But for the sake of this video, and what you may not have known, is that there are 83 ending slides. These can really be broken down to the Dead Money ending slides, the original game's endgame narrations, Honest Hearts ending slides, Lonesome Road, and finally the Old World Blues ending slides. The more I talk about this, the more I'm tempted to do an entire video on every ending in New Vegas. But for now, just know you likely haven't seen all 83 slides, so I hope you find a new one while watching this vid.
Alright, let's talk about Roxy, the cyberdog companion you can create in the Old World Blues DLC. She's not your typical follower like Boone or Eddie. Roxy is actually made in the X8 Research Center by fusing a regular dog with a robot. You can build her yourself once you find the right holotape, which is located downstairs on a big table near the door to the institutional test area in X8. After you grab it, head down the hallway to the left of the X8 entrance. That's where the splicing terminal is. You then pop the holotape into the terminal and boom, you've got Roxy. Roxy's a bit different from the other companions in terms of control though. She doesn't use the standard companion wheel. If you want her to follow you or stay put, you've got to talk to her directly. Also, she's kind of homebound. She won't leave the X8 facility. If you try to walk out, she'll just sit by the entrance. But what's cool is that Roxy will return at the end of the game in a slide. If you make Roxy and Rex is still alive back in the Mojave, the game's ending slide will say that somehow Roxy escaped Big Mountain and eventually met up with Rex. The two of them then go on to have a litter of cyber puppies called the Boston Terrifiers. How this works is anyone's guess, because they aren't just organic pups. The slide says that they construct them. They're cyber puppies, so they're probably built using the machines where Roxy was made. The bigger issue is how the hell they're supposed to grow with cybernetic limbs and organs. Also, you can only get this slide if you have the Wild Wasteland trait, so the whole thing is kinda iffy anyways. But it's something cool to learn if you haven't seen it before. So Matthew's Animal Husbandry Farm might seem like just another rundown spot in the Mojave, but there's actually a super dark story hiding there. Scattered throughout the farm, you'll find torn diary pages that piece together what happened. Apparently, this was a small family-run farm around 2281. Just a couple and their kid. One day, the parents left to head over to Camp Searchlight to grab some supplies, but they never came back. After a few days of waiting, the kid decides to go look for them, and what they find was straight up heartbreaking. Turns out Camp Searchlight had been completely irradiated thanks to some Legion sabotage, and the child's parents didn't make it out as humans. They had been turned into feral ghouls, and when they found them, they attacked in a panic. The kid had to shoot them and then run. Back at the farm, things didn't exactly improve. Alone, traumatized, and barely holding it together, the child starts to spiral. The diary entries get darker, accusing the animals, which were malnourished Brahmin and bighorners, of plotting to take over the farm. They become convinced that they're turning into ghouls too and wants to stop them before it's too late. And then in the final page, they make a decision. If the animals want the farm, they can't have it. So the child sets the farmhouse on fire while still inside. When you read it for the first time, your heart just kind of drops. It's a little shocking, honestly.
Welcome to the headquarters of the Sunset Sarsaparilla Company. Wrangle up a stool and listen to old Festus jaw a while.
What's New Vegas's favorite drink? I'll give you a hint. It isn't Nuka-Cola. Sunset Sarsaparilla is the most popular drink in the West. But did you ever stop to wonder what's actually in this legendary soda? Founded way back in 1918, the Sunset Sarsaparilla Company built an empire around its iconic beverage, whose popularity soared nationwide and even into Canada by the year 2077. Of course, success breeds imitation, and even Nuka-Cola tried to mimic its flavor with their own Nuka-Cola Wild. But Sunset Sarsaparilla had a darker side, and before the bombs fell, a controversial study broadcasted on national television claimed the drink caused a shocking array of side effects. From nausea and dizziness to anxiety, tooth decay, organ damage, and ironically, even digital numbness. The company fiercely denied these claims but quietly ramped up their public relations efforts to save face and preserve profits.
If you're hearing about the health advisory that aired on Channel 6 recently, say, silly old advisory.
Adding to the intrigue, an urban legend emerged just before the Great War. Rumor had it, special bottle caps marked with a blue star could earn you an incredible prize from the Sunset Sarsaparilla Company. Kind of like hunting for that special star on lollipop wrappers as a kid that we all used to do, and we always found it too. Even better, if you've played New Vegas's Honest Hearts add-on, you might have discovered a secret. A recipe to craft your very own homebrewed version of Sunset Sarsaparilla. All it takes is a single bottle cap, an empty Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle, Nevada agave fruit, and some xander root. While the root sadly isn't something you'll find at your local grocery store, the internet has speculated it might taste something like a ginger root. So if you ever wanted to whip up your own Sunset-inspired soda at home, ginger might just be your secret ingredient. To be honest, I'm not a huge soda person, so y'all have to let me know in the comments if you tried recreating it and if it was worth the effort. The Holy Frag Grenade is a unique weapon in New Vegas that many of us never got to experience or use. Hidden deep within the irradiated ruins of Camp Searchlight lies this unique and devastatingly powerful weapon. Available exclusively to players who choose the Wild Wasteland trait, the Holy Frag Grenade isn't your ordinary explosive. It's a playful homage to Monty Python's classic comedy, The Holy Grail. Complete with a white cross painted dramatically on its side, this grenade packs a heavenly punch, dealing significantly more direct and explosive damage than a standard frag grenade. But the Holy Frag Grenade isn't just powerful, it's uniquely accessible, requiring absolutely no explosive skills to wield, unlike its mundane counterparts. Unfortunately, Divine Intervention only blesses players with 3 grenades total. These explosive treasures never respawn, making every throw a monumental decision, so use them sparingly if at all. Getting your hands on these sacred grenades isn't easy either. They're guarded fiercely by 2 golden geckos lurking in the basement of a church, reinforcing their holy and dangerous aura. If your character has a loose cannon trait or the splash damage perk, be warned. Escaping the grenade's powerful blast might be a challenge, and even deadly creatures who survive the blast will turn hostile. Without the Wild Wasteland trait, there will be too many nukes sitting in lieu of the grenades instead. Fun fact, the Holy Frag Grenade's roots trace all the way back to Fallout 2, where developers initially planned a holy hand grenade encounter inspired by Monty Python, but sadly never implemented it, at least yet. Next time you're roaming the Mojave with the Wild Wasteland trait, make a pilgrimage to Camp Searchlight and enjoy.
Barton Thorne is a prospector living near Good Springs in 2281. Not much is known about Barton or his motives, but he tries to deceive the courier by telling them to kill the geckos on the ridge to save his girl. Afterward, he tries to kill the courier in order to retrieve a treasure stashed at the ridge overlook. Well, interestingly, Note to Self is a paper note which was cut from the final version of Fallout New Vegas. According to its editor ID, the note was actually meant to be assigned to Barton Thorne. It says this: "Remember not to roll off the cliff and kill yourself while you're sleeping. You'll show her, you'll show everyone. What does too stupid to live even mean anyway?" This dude was having a manic episode, clearly. I'm not sure why the note was cut from the game though, but it's always fun shedding light on the cut content anyway. If you ever find yourself wandering south of Nipton Road pit stop, you might stumble across the Scorpion Burrow. This place is an unmarked location in the dry lake bed, and it's exactly what it sounds like, a nasty little hideout full of rad scorpions. Outside of the burrow, things are already sketchy. We run into a bunch of giant rad scorpions, and just to make it more chaotic, a pack of night stalkers. And those two groups don't get along and will usually start fighting each other, unless they spot you. Then congratulations, you become target number 1. Now if you're a psychopath and decide to head inside, the burrow itself is just one long tunnel that opens up into 2 larger rooms. It's not a maze or anything, but it's full of scorpions. Right near the entrance, you'll come across a dead Wastelander, and deeper there are 2 more bodies, including 2 more Wastelanders, a dead Jackal gang member, and a prospector who clearly didn't make it. At the end of the tunnel is where the real nightmare begins, the Rad Scorpion Queen. She is massive, tough, and absolutely not messing around. This is an arachnophobe's absolute nightmare. And I know they're not spiders, but they kind of elicit that same feeling. If you know, you know. Anyways, it's a pretty crazy place that's just unmarked and found in a hole in the middle of the desert. I love it. Did you know that there are legendary versions of creatures in New Vegas that you can hunt down? The legendary bloatfly in Old World Blues is a shockingly powerful enemy, dealing 300 damage per shot, equal to an alpha Deathclaw, and it boasts twice the health of a legendary one. It hovers just out of melee range, fires plasma-like projectiles, and then it explodes on death, leaving only goo. Easily one of the deadliest and most absurd enemies in the series. The legendary fire gecko is found in the Fire Root Cavern, and it's about twice the size of a regular fire gecko. It's extremely fast and it hits hard, making it a serious threat in close combat, even though it does look pretty goofy. And then you have the legendary Deathclaw, which is the deadliest creature in the Mojave, found deep within Deadwind Cavern. It deals double the damage of a normal Deathclaw, and it's flanked by 2 more when encountered. You'll find a fallen Brotherhood of Steel soldier near him, clutching the unique grade launcher Mercy, which shows just how lethal this beast is. Unlike the others in the cave, he doesn't respawn, so once you kill him, he'll stay dead. There are 2 other creatures, Shandy a Night Stalker and Specimen 73, that are kind of considered legendary with their stats, but they don't have the moniker, so I figured I'd just give them a little shout out. So prospectors are basically the Wasteland's version of treasure hunters. Not gold or gems though. They're after old world tech, weapons, caps, and anything they can find in pre-war ruins. These folks are usually just regular people, not trained soldiers. Most of them are just NCR citizens or settlers or drifters, who figured scavenging was a better option than farming or signing up for a faction. You'll run into a few of them in the game. There's the prospector in Novak hanging around with a drink and some regrets. Another one shows up in Primm near the Vicky and Vance casino. There's a few more that appear out in the wild. Some are alive and some are not so lucky. You'll often find their bodies in places like vaults or Deathclaw nests, places no sane person would go unless they were desperate or had a death wish. And don't let me forget everyone's favorite, Easy Pete and Good Springs. They're not part of any big group or faction, they're just individuals trying to get by. Sometimes you can talk to them, and then other times you find what's left of them and pick through their loot. It's a tough life, but in places like the Mojave, a lot of people figure it's worth the risk.
There's a handful of greasers down in the sewers causing trouble. They ain't packing too much iron, but I'd like them dealt with all the same.
The Greasers are a small-time gang you can run into, hanging out in the North Sewers beneath North Vegas Square. They're led by a guy named Greasy Johnny, and while they're not a huge threat like the Fiends or Powder Gangers, they've been causing enough trouble for the locals that someone wants them gone. There's basically this guy who acts like a neighborhood watch for the area and gives you the quest, "Someone to watch over me," to deal with the problem. When it comes to dealing with the Greasers, you've got a few options. You can go in guns blazing, of course, and just wipe them out. Or, if you're more diplomatic, you can talk Johnny into leaving peacefully with a decent speech check of 65.
Oh yeah? Fuck off, asshole.
There's also a barter route where you can bribe him with 100 caps, or 50 if your barter skill is high enough. It's super easy to miss these guys, so that's why I think a lot of icebergs have them on their list. If you decide to kill Mr. House, you'll receive a note titled, "A tragedy has befallen all mankind." This note serves as an obituary, detailing House's life and accomplishments. It highlights his role as the founder of Robco Industries, his foresight in preparing Las Vegas for nuclear war, and his efforts to rebuild the city post-war. The note shows the belief that House was humanity's best hope for survival and progress. Also, it seems like it was written in a tone that suggests House himself authored it, possibly as a preemptive eulogy, given phrases like, "We'll revise and finish this up later." You guys can pause if you want to read the whole thing. It's where we get a lot of background information on House. But I will say that it feels like a biased piece because he probably did write it, saying things like he was cheated out of his fortune, and was that really the case, or are there more nuances to that story? Pretty interesting though. R.O.U.S is a graphic novel that serves as a prologue to Fallout New Vegas, offering deeper insights into key characters and events leading up to the game's opening. Released with the game's collector's edition and later digitally by Dark Horse Comics, it was written by Chris Avallone, a senior designer for New Vegas, with cover art by Mr. Darrow. The story takes place a week before the main game's events, focusing on Benny. He is orchestrating a plan to seize control of New Vegas from Mr. House. To achieve this, he collaborates with a group of great cons, including characters like Jessup, McMurphy, and Chance. Their mission? Intercept you carrying the mysterious platinum chip. Then you have Chance, a great con that was deeply scarred by the Bitter Springs massacre. He's portrayed as a troubled soul battling severe PTSD and substance abuse. His internal struggles and tragic are explored, shedding light on the complexities of the great con's experiences and motivations. It dives into the internal dynamics of the chairman. The singer, a former tribe member turned lounge performer at the Tops Casino, becomes a focal point. His nostalgia for the tribe's nomadic past and influence over other members pose a threat to Benny's vision, leading to a calculated and fatal intervention. It's an awesome piece of New Vegas lore that is pretty much overlooked by anyone especially playing these days. If you love Fallout or New Vegas, then I would highly recommend that you try and give this a read at least once. There's even locations in the game that are direct aftermaths of what happened within the story.
There's a hidden challenge perk called Mead of the Champions that offers a unique but kind of disgusting way to boost your stats. To unlock the perk, you first need to have the Cannibal perk, which allows you to consume human corpses. Then you have to go a step further and feast on the bodies of 4 key figures: Caesar, Mr. House, the King, and President Kimball. Once you've done the culinary tour of the Mojave's most influential leaders, the Mead of Champions perk grants you a temporary boost of +1 luck, intelligence, charisma, and even strength for 60 seconds after consuming any human corpse. It's a dark path to power, but in the Wasteland, sometimes you have to eat your way to the top. In Honest Hearts, the Ghost of She is a unique Yao Guai, residing in Zion Canyon's Ghost Den. According to the Sorrows tribe lore, a curious young girl ventured into a cave inhabited by a Yao Guai and was killed. The tribe believes that since she died before receiving a name, her spirit merged with the beast, leading to the legend of the Ghost of She. During the Rite of Passage quest, the Sorrow shaman Whitebird tasks you with consuming a sacred datura root concoction, inducing hallucinogenic effects, and then hunting the Ghost of She to retrieve its paw. You then experience visual distortions due to the tea, and upon confronting the Ghost of She, the beast appears engulfed in flames and can create multiple copies of itself during battle. After defeating it and returning the paw to Whitebird, you're rewarded with She's Embrace, a unique Yao Guai gauntlet. I guess the deeper theory here is, what really is this thing? Why is it on fire and can separate into clone things? Maybe it is the ghost of the little girl fused with the bear. Or more likely, you're just having a full-blown trip thanks to the goof juice. Who knows? So Ulysses. A lot of people don't know that he was originally supposed to be something very different. Your companion. Yes, Ulysses was originally written as a recruitable character in the base game. He would have joined you like Boone, Veronica, or Arcade Gannon, and acted as kind of a living lens into Caesar's Legion. Unlike most companions who either hated the Legion or were largely neutral, Ulysses would have given you insight into what the Legion stood for, its goals, and why people might choose to follow Caesar. He wasn't just a mouthpiece though. He had his own past, his own disillusionments, and a unique worldview that made him stand out among the rest of the cast. Unfortunately, according to Josh Sawyer, Ulysses had so much dialogue and depth that he simply couldn't fit on the disc. Literally. He had to be cut late into development, and it's something the dev team reportedly regretted. His character was just too ambitious for the game's technical limits at the time, but instead of scrapping him entirely, the developers save Ulysses for Lonesome Road. There he reappears not as a friend, but a philosophical foil to the courier. He blames you for the destruction of the Divide, challenges your choices throughout the game, and acts as a final reckoning for everything your character has done. In a way, even though he wasn't your companion in the base game, Lonesome Road turns him into something more, an ideological equal and one of the courier's few true peers in the Wasteland. So while we never got to have Ulysses as a companion walking at our side, we still got to hear his voice just from the other end of the road. If you didn't already love Fantastic, then this might change your mind. When you hand over Helios 1 to Caesar, you'll come back and find Fantastic. Well, it's probably best if I just show you.
Hey man, when in Rome.
After completing the heist at the Sierra Madre, you can return to the abandoned Brotherhood of Steel Bunker. There, in Father Elijah's quarters, you'll find a terminal with a locked hollow message labeled "For Veronica." This message is of course intended for Veronica, your companion and Elijah's former apprentice. The hollow message is secured with a sensor that ensures only Veronica can access it. If you bring Veronica to the terminal and allow her to read the message, she gains the Elijah's Last Words perk, enhancing her melee attack by 150% and giving her melee attacks a 25% chance to knock down enemies. Alternatively, if you choose to access the message yourself, you receive the Elijah's Ramblings perk, which increases your melee critical hit damage by 150%. We don't actually know exactly what the message says, but it does give Veronica some interesting dialogue about her past with Elijah. When near certain graveyards like Good Spring Cemetery and Camp Forlorn Hope, you'll hear these ghostly whispering sounds, especially during nighttime. At Good Spring Cemetery, you can find ghostly voices and unsettling noises. Some speculate that these sounds are more than just environmental effects, suggesting that they may be linked to the graves or even your actions, like digging up graves with a shovel. Similarly, at Camp Forlorn Hope's graveyard, there are ghost whispers which seem to serve as reminders of the lives lost in the ongoing conflict. Now, on this channel, we've talked about ghosts being confirmed in the Fallout franchise. Like, it's pretty much a no thing now, guys. So this probably really is the whispering of ghosts, or just a little Easter egg for the graveyards. The weapon binding ritual in Honest Hearts is one of those weird tribal concoctions that seems like superstition at first glance. Yet, somehow, it works. On paper, it's a combat enhancer, giving you a solid boost to melee and unarmed damage while also healing your limbs, which is super handy in hardcore mode. It even kind of mimics Psycho, except it's not addictive and has this very ritualistic ceremonial vibe. Now, if you look at the ingredients, knife, leather belt, wonder glue, healing powder, it definitely seems weird. The knife and leather belts, they don't exactly scream medicine, but that's kind of the point. The ritual isn't just about chemistry, but maybe it's about belief, placebo, and the power of preparing for battle in a way that mentally primes you to fight like a beast. The knife seems to be purely symbolic. It's used to make a small cut, nothing fatal, just enough to get the blood pumping. The leather belt probably acts like a makeshift tourniquet tightening around the arm to restrict blood flow temporarily. Then, the wound gets packed with healing powder and wonder glue, which sounds ridiculous, but in a wasteland filled with mutated plants and post-war chemistry, it just might create a numbing stimulant-like reaction. Once the belt comes off and blood flows again, it likely pushes the mixture through the system fast, giving you a head rush, dulling pain, and boosting adrenaline. And yeah, there's definitely a ritualistic placebo effect at play here. Tribes doing this together, hyping each other up with chants or shared belief, would only amplify the results. Group psychology is a powerful thing, especially when you're walking into a fight feeling like you're invincible. The part that doesn't quite add up is the limb healing. It's not just pain relief, it actually repairs damage. That's where things get a little more supernatural, or maybe there's just something in Zion's healing powder that we don't fully understand. Either way, it's another example of Fallout's mix of strange science and wasteland mysticism working together in weird, surprisingly effective ways. Basically, we have no idea how it works, but as Todd always says,
all of this just works.
They're here. Don't let them get the antidote. Oh, it's just you. You can't have it either.
This is an age-old theory at this point. Nobark Noonan is one of those unforgettable side characters in New Vegas. The local kook of Novak, spouting off wild conspiracies about lizard men, invisible ghouls, and brain-stealing machines. Most players just chalk him up as some comic relief, the crazy old guy in a tinfoil hat. But there is a running theory that he's not just some random eccentric. Some fans believe that Nobark is actually the Chosen One, the protagonist of Fallout 2 decades after their adventure. It does sound ridiculous at first, until you start looking at the little details. First off, the timeline fits. Fallout 2 takes place in 2241 and New Vegas is set in 2281. That's a 40-year gap. If the Chosen One was in their late teens or early 20s during Fallout 2, they'd be in their 60s or early 70s by the time of New Vegas, which seems about the age Nobark appears to be. It's in the right ballpark at least. Then there's his knowledge on weird specific things. A lot of Nobark's ramblings sound like nonsense, until you realize some of them line up eerily well with events from past games. He talks about government experiments, secret conspiracies, creatures from pre-war labs, all stuff the Chosen One actually encountered. He even seems unusually well versed in Enclave tech and behavior, despite supposedly being just another random drifter in Novak. Another big point is that Nobark has survived all sorts of chaos, including living in a town crawling with feral ghouls, rad scorpions, and random mercs. For someone who seems so unhinged, he's surprisingly resourceful. That tracks with someone who canonically helped take down the Enclave and basically save the post-apocalyptic West Coast. Some fans speculate that Nobark's madness might actually be PTSD, or intentional rambling to keep people at a distance. Like maybe he wants people to think he's harmless. But the biggest pieces of evidence are the wrecked Highwayman, which is a car that looks exactly like the car you drive in Fallout 2 and is found near Novak. And then there's a gun that you can find in the dino shop called That Gun, which looks almost exactly like the same gun the Chosen One carries in Fallout 2. How did all of these things end up in Novak? It's pretty weird. Of course, there's no direct confirmation. Obsidian hasn't said anything official, and it could all just be fans reading too deep into an amusing NPC. But the theory has stuck around for years because it's just plausible enough. Nobark could very well be a war hero lost to time, hiding behind rambling stories to keep the horrors of the past buried, and to keep anyone from asking too many questions. So next time you're in Novak, maybe listen a little closer to what Nobark is saying. It might not be all crazy after all. There's a ton of cut content in Fallout New Vegas, but few lost stories are as intriguing or as mysterious as the one involving Abe and Monte, two ghouls that were originally tied to Veronica's backstory. Let's start with Abe, also known as Abraham. In the early stages of development, Abe was a ghoul who played a major role in Veronica's personal questline. According to what we know from design docs and cut dialogue, he was presumed dead during a retreat, possibly during some Brotherhood operation. But instead of dying, he survived and ended up healing in a mysterious place called the Crater. Most people think this is just an early name for Big Mountain. From there, Abe traveled north, and that's where it gets even more interesting. Abe was actually a proto-version of Father Elijah, the antagonist from Dead Money and Veronica's former mentor. But in this early draft, he was envisioned as a ghoul. Over time, the devs dropped the ghoul angle and reshaped him into the twisted, power-hungry elder that we know today. Then there's Monte, another ghoul with a role in this scrap storyline. The courier was supposed to meet Monte during a quest that had some very different stakes from what we see in the final game. You'd have to either kill him or trap him in a subway tunnel to recover something called an accelerator. Inside the accelerator was a farewell message meant for Veronica. The whole quest would have been about Veronica digging into her past, possibly uncovering more about her family or her time before the Brotherhood. The message from Abe, the mission to recover the accelerator, and the encounter with Monte were all set to be part of a personal journey. Sadly, all of this was cut and replaced with Father Elijah's storyline, with the updated dialogue to match. Well, maybe it's not sad. The Father Elijah storyline is still pretty great. But it's fascinating to think about what it could have been. Instead of Elijah just showing up in Dead Money, we might have met his earlier ghoul version in the base game. We might have helped Veronica find closure or even uncover secrets that the Brotherhood wanted buried. So while Abe and Monte never made it into the final cut of New Vegas, their existence shows just how many branching paths the developers considered, and how the game's characters, especially Veronica and Elijah, evolved into what we see today. Who knows, maybe in some alternate timeline, Abe the Ghoul is still out there wandering the waste with secrets only Veronica would understand. So let's talk about Stripe. No, not the one from Gremlins, though that is kind of the whole joke. I'm talking about Stripe, the miniature Deathclaw hiding out in Old World Blues. and easily one of the most hilarious and terrifying surprises waiting just for you. If you head over to Higgs Village, specifically behind House 103, you'll spot a cute little doghouse, and right next to it is a bone, a bull, and what looks like a harmless backyard setup. This is where Stripe lives. At first, Stripe seems like a joke. He's a tiny Deathclaw. Seriously, this thing is like the size of a common dog. But don't let his size fool you. The moment you get too close, Stripe bursts out of the doghouse like a landmine with claws. He's small, he's fast, and he hits like a truck. Despite being scaled down, Stripe is not a pushover. He's technically an alpha male Deathclaw, just biologically miniaturized for science reasons that we can safely assume were very, very unethical. His health sits somewhere between a normal alpha and the legendary Deathclaw, and he deals 250 damage per hit with his melee attacks. He can even leap at you like a full-size Deathclaw, but because he's smaller, the range is short. But the pain is not. Funny thing is, he'll only chase you as far as the fountain in the center of Higgs Village. This is actually another reference to his origin, Stripe from the Gremlins movie, who dies in the fountain in the final act. Even the chicken leg near his doghouse is a nod to the Gremlins. Oh, and the letters on the doghouse originally spelled Gabe, which is the name of another creature from the DLC. But in this encounter, someone ripped the letters off and rearranged them to spell out Stripe. I do want to point out that he is also a Wild Wasteland trait exclusive. I've said it once, and I'll say it again. Just take the trait. Anyways, Stripe might be pint-sized, but he's pound for pound one of the most dangerous Easter eggs in the Mojave, and easily one of the funniest what the hell moments in New Vegas. Speaking about Higgs Village, did you know that you can find Liberty Prime there? Okay, that's pretty clickbaity, but here he is in all his glory behind none other than Mr. House himself. I know you're already heading to the comments to start typing away that clearly his legs when compared to House show that he can't be Liberty Prime because he's way smaller. This is true, but for those that don't know, House was a tech mogul, founder, president, and the mind behind R.O.U Industries, one of the most powerful technology companies in pre-war America. This is the same R.O.U that created the Protectrons, Terminals, Pit-Boys, and even had ties to Vault-Tec. House was a genius, and his influence stretched across nearly every major piece of tech in the Fallout universe, and presumably even Liberty Prime itself. Several sources, including terminals and in-game dialogue, suggest that R.O.U was once contracted by the US military to help with various defense technologies. We know that Mr. House, as R.O.U CEO, had direct connections to the Department of Defense and was even involved in defense contracts tied to national security. His company was developing advanced robotics and AIs years before the war ended. If the military wanted help designing or automating a skyscraper-sized warbot, Mr. House would have been on the short list of people they'd call. House explicitly mentions that if the war had gone on just another decade, he would have deployed an army of robotic soldiers and repelled the Chinese invasion single-handedly, which sounds a lot like Liberty Prime's mission. So while the game never directly confirms Mr. House's role in Liberty Prime's construction, the timeline, his government ties, his obsession with robotics, and the nature of Prime's design all strongly suggest that he either contributed technology, schematics, or design influence to the program. This all leads me back to the photo. Yes, this is clearly not the Liberty Prime that we know and love. It's far too small in scale, but this could most definitely be a prototype of Liberty Prime. Maybe House started small and worked his way up. This would be the most likely scenario in my head. We don't see any other robots in the series that look quite like this, except for maybe the humanoid robots in Fallout Tactics. But that game isn't confirmed canon all the way, so who knows. Regardless, what do you guys think? Is it Prime or something else?
Buried deep in the game files of New Vegas is a developer test character with one of the more, interesting semi-Roman inspired names in the Mojave. But it's not a typo or a mod. Surprisingly, it's real and it's pronounced Testicles, not to be mistaken for Testicles, which is a completely different NPC in the game. Kidding. Testicles is what's known as a debug NPC, a character placed in a developer test cell used internally to tweak variables, trigger quest flags, and test outcomes during development. Think of this guy as a living cheat menu, with a Centurion's body and a god's ability to warp reality. If you speak to him, he can alter your reputation with nearly every faction in the game. He can also spawn wrecks on command, skip or modify major quests, and rewrite aspects of your playthrough like he's editing the source code. He shares a model with Bill the Tax Collector, who we covered in a different iceberg, but he's basically another obscure testing NPC, but Testicles himself never appears during normal gameplay. You have to manually spawn him in using this console command. Do that, and suddenly this toga-wearing demigod drops into the desert like a Roman glitch genie ready to rewrite the world at your command. And yes, his name is actually a callback to another Black Isle Obsidian classic, Planescape Torment, where a debug character with the exact name served a similar purpose. That game had testicles, this one had testicles. It's a developer legacy at this point, and kind of like an inside joke passed down across RPG generations like a sacred torch. But let's be honest, only Obsidian would put something this strange yet powerful and unapologetically named into their game and just never explain it. You don't simply find testicles, you summon him. This one is quick and simple, and really it's for all the PC players out there. If you're a console gamer, it won't be anything to get hyped about, but just know that there are console commands that allows PC players to hack the game in quirky ways. Whether that's spawning an NPC, leveling up automatically, or in this case, getting your own invisibility cloak. Alright, I'm overselling it. It isn't an invisibility cloak per se, but if you console command T-detect, it allows you to go invisible unbeknownst to NPCs. So the age-old question goes, if you could have any type of superpower, what would it be? For me, I'm personally choosing teleportation, but a strong second is to go invisible. And an even stronger third is to go invisible in the Mojave Wasteland. Think of all the havoc you could wreak, or all the good you could do. But I don't know, invisibility seems like it's more for nefarious purposes like robbing and stealing than anything else.
So there's this little oddity called the storage room safe note. It's just a scrap of paper you can pick up, and it's supposed to be the password for a terminal in the basement of the REPCONN test site. You get this note automatically added to your Pip-Boy after checking out an entry called Storage Room Terminal on one of the administrator's terminals. It's on the second floor of the REPCONN facility. It says, "Hi Steve, we finished converting that old generator room into storage, like you asked. If you need to get into the safe, the password is REPCONN. Thanks, Bill." Now here's the funny part. The terminal in the basement that this note is supposed to unlock, well, it's already unlocked by default. So the password is basically useless. Most people figure it was just part of some cut content or an idea that didn't make it into the final version of the game. Thanks, Bill. You know, a lot of people never really mess with the Misfortune perk, which is kind of a shame because it's actually one of the most bizarre and interesting perks in the game. Once you've got it, there's a 10% chance that Misfortune will show up when you use VATS. It's kind of like the Mysterious Stranger, she pops in and out of nowhere to lend a hand, but this one's with a twist. Instead of finishing off enemies like the Stranger does, Misfortune doesn't deal much direct damage. Instead, she stuns enemies, basically knocking them out or fatigues them. But her attacks do more than just daze people. She can randomly mess up multiple enemies in an area and even has a high chance of damaging or completely breaking their weapons. That does include grenades, by the way. If she hits someone holding one, it might explode right in their hands. And just like she shows up suddenly, she vanishes just as quick once the VAT sequence ends. Now technically you can pick up both the Misfortune and Mysterious Stranger perks in the same playthrough, but they'll never appear together. They share the same activation trigger, so it's always one or the other. There are theories about who or what Misfortune actually is. Nobody knows for sure. Some fans think she might be immortal, maybe even something cosmic or eldritch, but she definitely doesn't behave like a normal person. She seems to attach herself to people involved in big world-changing events, like the Courier. So is she some kind of time cop, keeping things on track by protecting key players? Maybe, or maybe she's some kind of fear-feeding entity that draws energy from adrenaline and danger, appearing only when her meal ticket, which is you, is in trouble. Or here's a wild one, what if she's just some poor soul who got tangled up in a Vault-Tec experiment gone wrong? Maybe she's permanently bonded with a Pip-Boy and phases in and out of reality whenever VATS is triggered. If that's the case, man, I really don't want to know what kind of dimension she gets yanked back to between appearances. So yeah, Misfortune might not be as flashy as the Mysterious Stranger, but there's definitely more going on underneath the surface. Whether she's a glitch in reality, a timeline guardian, or just a walking Vault-Tec horror story, we'll probably never know. It's another mystery we probably won't ever solve, and we have no other pieces of lore mentioning her outside of the perk, unlike the Mysterious Stranger.
Before getting into the REPCONN sign, we wanted to give a quick refresher of what the original site was. Once a bustling rocket launch facility poised to merge with Robco Industries, REPCON's fate took a shitty turn following a disastrous waste spill. When Robco executives arrived to inspect, the spill severely damaged REPCON's standing, spiraling into a blame game between Steve Reynolds, the launch facility project manager, and Martin, a senior engineer. Reynolds accused Martin of negligence, while Martin pointed fingers at Reynolds' harsh working conditions. Ultimately, the merger fell apart, leaving the REPCON site abandoned and forgotten. Now about that missing O from the REPCON site. Wander over to Gibson's scrapyard and you'll uncover a cool Easter egg. The O from the REPCON sign is repurposed by none other than Old Lady Gibson herself, as her favorite chair of course. It's a subtle and often overlooked connection between Old Gibson and the test site. Old Lady Gibson fondly reminisces how she and her late husband spent years scavenging the REPCON test site and making a living by selling whatever scraps they could salvage. It's these small but thoughtful details, like a scavenger's prized possession being a repurposed piece of the Wasteland's history, that make New Vegas so memorable. Usually, I don't try and take the time to enjoy the small moments like this to appreciate this humble chair, but the O from REPCON's forgotten past and the quiet story it tells about resilience and adaptation in the Wasteland is a cool thing to see, since it's likely what people would have to do if they were in her situation. In her type of lifestyle, you'd really have to make do with what you got.
Ring-a-ding, baby, ta-ta.
If you've wandered the neon-soaked streets of New Vegas, you've undoubtedly crossed paths with Benny, the slick, fast-talking head of the chairman and mastermind behind a bold plot to seize control of New Vegas from Mr. House. Benny isn't just any secondary antagonist. He's charismatic, cunning, and surprisingly charming when he wants to be. At least that's what the ladies say. But here's something you might have missed. If your courier was female and chose a rather intimate approach in dealing with Benny, meaning you slept with him and then generously spared his life afterward, he leaves behind a unique, somewhat cheeky note known as the thanks baby note. Now, I realize that these are a lot of ifs. For instance, I never once thought to play as a female courier, nor did I think to try and sleep with Benny, nor would I even think to spare this sap's life. But if the stars aligned and that was your playthrough, then this is likely old news. But for me, and likely a large portion of you watching, enjoy the listen. Pussycat, thanks for showing this cat the best hey he's ever. Talk about platinum and fuck, let's redo it. Pussycat, thanks for showing this cat the best hey he's ever. Talk about platinum in the sack toots. Where'd you learn that 18 karat trick with the heels of your feet? You didn't just make my toes curl, they popped off and rolled under the bed. I wish I could stay for another round, but this gent's got places to be and things to do. You showing up has forced my hand, baby. The time to act is now. I won't be around for a while, but if everything works out right, you and me are a date, got it? Wouldn't miss it for all the caps in Vegas. Now don't get clingy and try to follow me. Ciao, Benny. I hope you enjoyed my take on Benny. I probably didn't do him the service he needs, but he's a piece of shit anyways, guys.
Private Kyle Edwards is an NCR soldier turned ghoul found at Camp Searchlight. He's holed up in a Searchlight home northwest of the elementary school. If he meets your companion Raul, you might have an interaction like this.
Cheer up, kid. It's not that bad. Sure, your skin rots off, and you start to stink like a public toilet after Cinco de Mayo. But,
What? How is that not bad? In fact, how could it get worse?
Well, assuming you survive the radiation sickness, the lynch mobs, and the possibility of going feral, one day, you'll get old and decrepit, like me.
Oh, God.
What? Was it something I said?
I'll keep this one short. Think of something reminiscent of Oblivion's paintbrushes, an inanimate object with a weird trait. In order to see what I mean, start by spending your entire day playing New Vegas, playing through the main quest line, various side quests, and then getting to the point of delirium. Once you're at this point, take out a shotgun and go shoot a tumbleweed or two. As demonstrated, these seemingly lightweight, innocuous plants don't behave as you'd expect. Instead of scattering or disintegrating, tumbleweeds react with bizarre physics, bouncing erratically or shooting off at unnatural speeds and angles. A lot of players don't really think about shooting tumbleweeds, so it's a quirk in the game that goes unnoticed often. But once you know, then it's hard not to shoot them when you see them. Yes, we're still on tumbleweeds. Are they alive? Are they sentient? Fallout almost introduced something even stranger than tumbleweeds that defied physics. They almost introduced sentient, radioactive tumbleweeds. Yes, you heard that right. Not only were these bizarre wasteland flora alive, but they also had a mind of their own. Hidden deep within the game's resources lies an unused entity known simply as the radioactive tumbleweed. Classified as an actual creature rather than an object, these crusty plants emitted radiation on par with a glowing one. And they could independently roll around the Mojave and even add health, meaning you could kill them. So why didn't these haunting glowing weeds make the final cut? New Vegas' designer Joshua Sawyer explained that the radioactive tumbleweeds were ultimately removed because their inclusion caused significant game-breaking bugs. Despite the concerns, I could just imagine wandering the Mojave at night, the unsettling green glow of radiation in the distance, only to realize it wasn't a ghoul or a glowing radroach, but a rolling sentient weed silently hunting you down. While this bizarre concept didn't quite make it into the final game, I wonder if there will be an Easter egg in the TV show's second season. If so, you'll likely be one of the few to know that it's at all an Easter egg. What does the Rose of Sharon Cassidy, Gannon, and Veronica have in common? I mean, aside from their wit or unique backstories. Any ideas? They're all quietly linked by a membership in a secret, oddly named faction buried within the game's code. The Don't Tase Me Bro faction. But what's the purpose of the secret group with a name that represents the early 2000s so well? Simply put, it's designed to prevent these beloved companions from getting tased, or in Mojave terms, vaporized, by the vigilant Stripgate Securitrons. It's essentially a hidden safety net that ensures Cass, Arcade, and Veronica won't meet an untimely and shocking demise at the hands of these security bots. While this little detail isn't as grand or conspiratorial as, say, the Illuminati, it's still a secret faction that we sadly don't get to be a part of. But it's nice knowing our friends get some diplomatic immunity in the lawless West.
Let's talk about the Lakelurk Hunter theory. This idea popped up in the community after players kept stumbling across dead or wounded Lakelurks out in the wild. Now sure, that could just mean they got into a scrap with other creatures, maybe even other Lakelurks. Maybe there's some weird internal drama in the Lakelurk world we don't understand yet. But things get strange when you realize every single Lakelurk corpse people found was totally cleaned out. There was no Lakelurk meat left behind, and that's not normal. Usually when an NPC or creature dies in a fight, there's still lootable stuff on them. The meat's always there unless something or someone took it. And it doesn't stop there. In the same areas, players started finding Lakelurk egg clutches completely emptied out. They're not just damaged or broken, but picked clean. Like someone came in, knew what they were doing, and took exactly what they wanted. Another weird thing is it's never a total bloodbath. Some Lakelurks are left alive, and you never find the bodies of whatever or whoever fought them. That's super unusual. Normally in a big fight between creatures, the losers' bodies are right there on the ground. Not here. So the theory started forming. What if there's a Lakelurk Hunter out there? Not just some random wastelander, but someone that's really skilled. Like expert level stealth, sharpshooter, and probably trained in sustainable hunting practices. Maybe this person's studying Lakelurks, trying to learn more about their biology and behavior. Or maybe they've been hired by some faction for some secret job. Or hey, maybe they're just out there living off the land, but with a weirdly focused obsession on hunting Lakelurks. Some people think the hunter avoids energy weapons too, because in all the supposed hunting sites, there's zero plasma residue or blast damage. So odds are they're using regular firearms, no flashy tech, just classic bullets and stealth. There's no mention of a Lakelurk Hunter anywhere in the game's files. No NPC, no hidden quest, nothing in the coding. Which means for now, this whole theory is based entirely on what players have pieced together from clues in the game world. But that mystery, that's part of what makes it so compelling. Is it just a coincidence, or did Obsidian sneak in some unspoken wasteland legend for players to uncover? There's this weird little item in the game called the Evil Gnome. At first glance, it looks just like your average garden gnome. Same size, same weight, same hey, I've been sitting in someone's yard too long thing. But instead of the usual goofy grin and the red hat, this guy's wearing a creepy scowl and some black rimmed glasses. He's not here to brighten your garden. He's here to judge it. There are actually two versions of the Evil Gnome in the game. They're functionally identical, same value and same weight, but they've got different internal IDs. One's labeled the Gaudy Gnome and the other's the Scotty Gnome. If you want to find one, you can find the Scotty Gnome version deep in the Fire Root Cavern. It's up in the part of the cave that leads you out from the irradiated pool area filled with the fire geckos. The gnome's kind of hidden among some plants, so it's easy to miss. Plus, with all the geckos running around or bumping into things, it can get knocked out of the original spot. The second one, the Gaudy Gnome, is way easier to find. It's sitting on a dresser in the Lucky 38 presidential suite. So if you're into weird collectibles, there you go. but knowing you guys, you're definitely going for both. The evil gnome is actually a nod to Fallout New Vegas' lead world builder Scott Everts. Hence the editor ID Scotty Gnome. And yeah, the gnome even kind of looks like him, which makes it even better, I guess. Next time you're decorating your home, maybe give the evil gnome a spot on the shelf. Just don't turn your back on it.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I hate you.
There's this title in Caesar's Legion that most players probably gloss over unless they're digging deep into the lore. This. You didn't think I'd actually try to pronounce that, right? I'm sure it sounds super official and fancy in Latin, but it basically translates to Consul of the Offices of Slavery. Yeah, that kind of job. The role exists within the inner workings of Caesar's Legion, and it's all about managing the slave trade. The guy running things in 2281 is M. Licinius Crassus, and under him are administrators like this. These dudes are the paper pushers of human trafficking. They're in charge of writing up legal-looking documents for slave sales and purchases. It's cold, organized, and very much how part of the Legion keeps its system running. Now, if you've done the One for My Baby quest in Novak, you might have stumbled across a holotape called the Bill of Sale. You find it inside an easy lock safe at the Dino Delight front desk. It's the smoking gun that confirms what Craig Boone already suspects. His wife Carla Boone was sold into slavery by none other than Jeannie Mae Crawford. The holotape straight up spells it out. It's written in that creepy formal legal tone, saying the Legion bought Carla Boone and even her unborn child for a total of 1,500 bottle caps. It promises that both of them are sound, healthy, and slaves for life. There's even a clause saying they owe Jeannie Mae another 500 caps if the baby is born successfully. The whole thing is signed by that guy on behalf of the consul. It's a reminder of how brutal and bureaucratic the Legion can be. They're not just about fighting and conquering, they've got a whole system behind the scenes keeping their cruelty running like a well-oiled machine. And Jeannie Mae, she was complicit in all of it, selling out Boone's family like it was just business. Gabin is a frumentarius, a spy and operative for Caesar's Legion. He steps into the spotlight under specific circumstances. If Vulpes Inculta, the Legion officer responsible for the massacre in Nipton, dies before the courier arrives there, or before the quest Render under Caesar begins, Gabin instead takes his place. When you first enter Nipton under these conditions, Gabin approaches to explain the grim lesson that the Legion imparted on the town. His dialogue is the same as Vulpes, detailing the reason behind the town's destruction and the Legion's motives. Interestingly though, Gabin provides additional insights into the Legion, including information about Legate Lanius, the notorious monster of the East. It's pretty rare to even run into Gabin, and that's why a lot of people don't even know about him. So there's a few things here that point to the fact that Rex may have been Caesar's dog. The first is that if you bring Rex with you to the Legion camp and you talk to Antony, he'll say this:
"The mechanical dog you have with you, where did you get it?" "Oh? Such things are common in Denver, but I didn't know that other cities had them as well. I ask because Caesar once had a similar pet, but it was lost during a battle."
Then there's a dialogue option with Rex where you can inspect his body and it says something about the faded red bowl on the side. Also, if you complete Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog by transplanting Lupus's brain, the ending will say something about his new Legion memories molding well with his old Legion memories. These all seem pretty convincing that at the very least, Rex came from Denver, by the way of the Legion. Now, whether he's Caesar's personal dog is up for debate, but there's still more. If you take him with you to talk to Caesar, Caesar actually recognizes him. He says something like, "This dog is familiar. I had a dog like this once." It's one of those blink and you'll miss it lines, but it suggests there's a history between Caesar and Rex potentially. That's pretty wild considering Caesar rarely shows sentiment for anything, especially not an NCR style police dog. And if you ask him to help you fix Rex's brain, he'll basically never turn you down. Maybe it's because he's also dealing with his own brain stuff and he correlates it, but maybe he feels some sentiment, like I said before, about Rex. There is essentially a different way to get to Nellis Air Force Base without the classic bomb run. It was sort of scrapped in the development, but they kept it in and made it relatively hard to enter. There's an unmarked train tunnel, and this tunnel is located east of Raul's shack and west of the Brotherhood of Steel safe house. Both entrances are secured with a very hard lock, requiring a lockpick skill of 100 to access. Inside, the tunnel is infested with feral ghouls, including some glowing ones, and it's lined with frag mines and bear traps. Making it through the tunnel allows you to approach Nellis Air Force Base from a less exposed position, potentially reducing exposure to the boomers' artillery bombardments. I've played this game for years and only recently learned about this place. It's insane just how much is going on in these games that you can miss.
Out in the Mojave, north of Griffinware's sacked caravan, there's a strange little spot called Brooks Tumbleweed Ranch. It's quiet, dusty, and full of, you guessed it, tumbleweeds. But if you wander up to the cattle pen on the north side of the ranch, things get weird really fast. A cloaked nightkin will suddenly uncloak himself and try to sell you a wind Brahmin. What's a wind Brahmin, you ask? According to this nightkin, it's one of those rolling tumbleweeds. Yes, he thinks the tumbleweeds are, quote, doggies, quote, and wants to sell you one for the low price of all of your caps. If you turn him down or make fun of the idea that the tumbleweeds aren't real animals, he'll get hostile and attack. You can try to play along, but the whole situation is designed to be pretty much against you. Originally, before a certain patch, if you agreed to buy a wind Brahmin without asking how much, the nightkin would actually give you a free stealth boy. A pretty good deal, all things considered. But after patch 1.4, they changed that. Now, if you agree to buy one without questioning the price, he'll just take all your caps. No stealth boy, no refund, just a broke courier and a satisfied nightkin rancher. The good news is, if you do end up finding and killing him, you can loot your caps back and snag his stealth boy while you're at it. Deep inside the old H&H Tools factory, you might come across a terminal with a strange option. Lucky 38 Executive Override. It sounds pretty important, like something that might unlock House's secrets or bring down his entire surveillance network. But if you try to trace what it actually does, you'll find absolutely nothing. No gameplay changes, no dialogue, and no follow-up. That's because this override, along with two others located at New Vegas Steel and House Resort near Camp Golf, was part of a cut version of the quest, The Moon Comes Over the Tower. Originally, the followers of the Apocalypse, through Emily, wanted you to do more than just slap a bug on a terminal inside Lucky 38. The plan was for you to access multiple override terminals, scattered across the Mojave first, and then weakening House's network so the bug could actually do something. These terminals still exist in the game world, but activating them doesn't advance the quest. And there's a ton of strange leftover data, like a VIP pass at the top of the H&H building and a locked flooded stairwell with high radiation leading up to a mysterious terminal room, seemingly built for more than just atmosphere. Even the VIP lounge terminal at the Lucky 38 has leftover scripting hints that it was meant to respond differently if the other overrides were activated. The final version of the quest? Way simpler. Emily appears after you leave the tops, asks for your help, and you walk into Lucky 38, hit a button on a terminal, and boom, 600 XP. The bug barely survives, and Emily thanks you, end of story. The originally planned multi-terminal quest line with deeper infiltration mechanics and potentially serious consequences for House's hold on the strip was never finished. Why was it scrapped? Maybe time, maybe complexity, maybe the devs thought it would mess up with the pacing. But the Lucky 38 Executive Override terminals remain in game, quiet, unused, and loaded with what-ifs. Most players have never heard of him, and you'll never see him in a normal playthrough. But tucked deep in the developer guts of New Vegas' final DLC, Lonesome Road, is a hidden NPC named Bill the Tax Collector, better known in the game files as the narrator for the DLC's ending slides. Bill isn't just some empty shell either. He's a fully defined NPC with his own stats, including hilariously a perfect 10 charisma, making him quite literally the most charming tax collector the Mojave never knew. He fills the same behind the scenes role as Ron the narrator, who delivers the main game's iconic ending narration. The difference is that while Ron has somewhat canon identity as a legendary Ron Perlman, Bill exists entirely in the background, never intended to be seen, just heard. Using console commands or glitching, you can summon him into the game world, and yep, he's just standing there, silently holding the weight of Lonesome Road's post-apocalyptic poetry. No voice lines, no interaction, just Bill. Why a tax collector? Nobody knows. Maybe it's a joke by the devs, a dig at bureaucracy, or maybe it's just a placeholder name they forgot to change. But in the end, Bill the Tax Collector is the unsung voice behind some of the Fallout universe's most emotionally heavy closing moments.
And this road has reached its end.
Near the irradiated pools of the Mesquite Mountains crater lies a place few players have ever stumbled into, a two-story structure known only as Hell's Motel. From the outside, it already lives up to its name. Constant radiation, roving feral ghouls, and bubbling toxic water. But inside, things get weirder. On the upper floor of this ruined building lies the body of Dr. Rotson, a non-feral ghoul. Nearby, you'll find an operating table and a crazed Mr. Handy. It paints a strange picture. One of a ghoul doctor working in total isolation, surrounded by ferals, and practically bathing in radiation. So what's the implication? Rotson was possibly running a makeshift medical clinic. But who was he treating? Definitely not humans. One theory is that Dr. Rotson was offering services specifically to other ghouls. The ferals outside may have once been patients or protectors before they lost their minds. The radiation-filled pools could have served as a kind of spa or recovery zone, since ghouls actually heal from radiation. Others think he was experimenting, maybe even trying to reverse feralism, and he either failed or he was betrayed by his own creations. The Mr. Handy gone rogue only adds to the sense that something went horribly wrong. The game offers no quests, no logs, no definitive answers. Just a doctor, a crater, and a motel soaked in death and decay. Hell's Motel is one of those quiet locations in New Vegas that feels like it used to have a story, but now only this remains. This one is heavily debated to this day, so don't shoot the messenger, alright? I don't know what the hell I'm talking about here as far as dams go. I'm no dam expert. Basically, there are those that say New Vegas has a major plot hole concerning the Hoover Dam and the fact that the NCR was able to restore it in a few months according to the game. So let's go over a few reasons why it might not work. For starters, the infrastructure would have suffered serious degradation over time. Hoover Dam was constructed in the 1930s, and by the time of the Great War in 2077, it had already been operating for over 140 years. After the bombs fell, maintenance likely came to a halt, and in the 200 years since, there's been no consistent upkeep. Without regular inspections, lubrication, and replacement of worn parts, critical components like turbines, valves, and control systems would have corroded, jammed, or failed outright. Simply put, massive hydroelectrical installations don't survive centuries of neglect without breaking down. There's also the issue of the electromagnetic pulse (EMP) damage. Fallout's version of the Great War included nuclear detonations across the globe, and high-altitude explosions would have unleashed EMPs that fried unshielded electronics over wide areas. Unless Hoover Dam's control systems were specifically hardened against EMPs, and there's no clear evidence they were, then much of its sensitive electronic infrastructure would have been rendered inoperable within seconds of the war starting. Transformers, relays, circuit boards, everything could have been wiped out. Even assuming the hardware remained physically intact, you'd still need highly trained personnel to run it. Hoover Dam isn't just a big plug you can pull on and off. It takes engineers, technicians, and a deep understanding of hydroelectric systems to get it back online. That kind of knowledge would have been incredibly rare in the post-apocalyptic world, especially in the early years. Any effort by the NCR to restore the dam's functionality would have required massive resources, scavenged parts, old world schematics, and a team of people who actually knew how to interpret them. That's a pretty tall order for a society still re-establishing basic infrastructure. Environmental factors also come into play. The Hoover Dam relies on the flow of the Colorado River, and it's unclear how stable or consistent that flow would be 200 years after a global nuclear war. Fallout and climate change could have altered weather patterns, dried up parts of the river, or made the water radioactive. Sediment buildup might have clogged intakes, or upstream collapses could have disrupted the dam's operation entirely. Without modern tools to manage the river's flow, Hoover Dam's output would likely be unstable or minimal. And if the dam was flooded, which would be the most likely scenario, pumping out all of that water would be another tremendous effort. Now in the dam's defense, the dam is equipped with shut-off valves, which likely would have closed automatically in the event of an emergency. This would have offered some protection to the turbines and helped prevent debris from getting too deep into the system if the trash screens failed. To get the dam operational again, crews would first need to clean out the intake area, replace the damaged trash screens, and inspect and repair the shutoff valve mechanisms. The turbines themselves would need a thorough inspection and likely repairs, as would the transformers. On top of that, the power lines connected to the dam would need to be replaced. The spillways, which are responsible for managing overflow and holding back massive amounts of water over the past 2 centuries, would also require inspection and possibly major renovations. All that said, restoring the dam wouldn't be impossible, especially with the manpower and resources that the NCR can bring to bear. They've got access to the Enclave remnants, help from the followers of the apocalypse, and maybe even assistance from Brotherhood defectors. And if you factor in Mr. House, who has vested interest in getting the dam's power flowing for his own goals, the idea of getting it up and running again starts to seem a lot more realistic. In essence, there are a lot of science fiction explanations through all of the Fallout games for a lot of wilder things than this dam, so I wouldn't put too much weight into it really. But also, I guess we'll find out in the show if it's still running or not.
In a game packed with power players like the NCR, Caesar's Legion, the Brotherhood of Steel, it's easy to forget about the little guys. But hiding out in the crumbling Monte Carlo suites near West Side is one of the Mojave's most obscure raider gangs known as the Scorpions. They're not legends by any stretch, and they're not even good at what they do. They're a low-level gang of small-time chem dealers and wannabe tough guys barely scraping by the edge of fiend territory, and usually getting their asses kicked when the two cross paths. They operate out of a total shit hotel, and if you bother to visit, you'll find them armed with 10mm pistols, sawed-off shotguns, and switchblades. Maybe even a ripper if someone's feeling bold. This is the kind of gang you mow down in seconds and forget you ever saw, but there is more to them than meets the eye. Or at least there was more to them at some point, which is why they're being mentioned right now. Their leader, Pvt, was meant to be more than just another raider boss. Cut content in the game files reveals that she was supposed to give the player a small unmarked quest. The mission? Help the Scorpions get a steady supply of ammo from the NCR quartermaster at Camp McCarran. One of the leftover assets from the scrapped quest is a note titled Ammo for the Scorpions, which reads the following. That's basically it. The Scorpion gang was likely to play a slightly bigger role in the Wasteland, which makes sense for the sole fact they're overnamed raiders. So although it would have been cool to see them play a bigger role to add to the lore, our best bet is seeing them in Fallout Season 2, if they even whisper their name on screen.
Was a prospector until I decided to settle here to get away from the NCR. Now we'll just take it easy and help out with the Brahmin and Bighorner.
Buried in the deepest layers of our game's modding madness lies one of the most absurd and beloved community in-jokes of all time. The Easy Pete migration. It all started with the chaotic Jerma 985 video where he spawned dozens of Easy Petes. Yes, that Easy Pete, the old dynamite hoarder from Good Springs. Without any prompts, these clone Petes didn't just stand around or explode in a fit of AI confusion. They simply walked. One by one, the Easy Petes began migrating. Not by car, not by horse, but by on foot across the Mojave, embarking on a treacherous journey all the way back to their true home, Good Springs. These Petes were likely dodging Deathclaws, super mutants, and the horrors of the Wasteland. They marched with uncanny purpose, all to gather peacefully inside Pete's tiny shack like migrating birds returning for the winter. What makes this hilarious and weirdly wholesome is that it wasn't just random NPC behavior. Easy Pete's AI is hard-coded to return to his house if displaced, even from the other side of the map. That means no matter where you drop him, even smack in the middle of Vegas Strip, his cowboy heart will always lead him home. The Easy Pete migration became an unexpected symbol of loyalty, perseverance, and just how bizarre Fallout's sandbox can get. It's the kind of absurdity that only happens when a game's systems are robust enough to support it and a community with a big enough love for the game to test it.
Mick and Ralph are known to bend the rules in their favor. We know that they have no problem skewing their moral compasses for the right price. I mean, they do sell fakes to make your way into New Vegas, but that might not be the worst part. A fan theory kind of popped up that Mick and Ralph might not have originated in New Vegas, but instead came from the pits. More specifically, the actual pit from Fallout 3. I'm not saying we have a lot of evidence to go off of here. In fact, we only have one piece of evidence and it's not that strong, to be honest. On the wall above Mick's secret inventory, there's an infiltrator rifle sitting behind the counter at Mick and Ralph's. Now, if you're like me, your first thought is probably, wait, why is a pit exclusive weapon all the way out in the Mojave? It's supposed to be used by the raiders in Pittsburgh, not here in a shop next to a guy pushing fake passports and rocket souvenirs. My first thought is that the infiltrator is technically just a heavily modified R91 assault rifle. Silencer, scope, bigger mag, no stock. So yeah, it's rare, but not impossible for it to show up outside of the pit. There are several ways we can conclude this. One, Mick and Ralph came from the East either as ex-slavers or slaves or whatever. Somehow they got their hands on an infiltrator rifle that is exclusive to the pit area so far as we know, and then they brought it out west. It does seem like this whole row of guns is a trophy section that Mick keeps on display. Maybe he was proud of his slaver past, or maybe he's proud that he took down a slaver and kept his gun. Who knows? Option number 2, and I think the most likely one, is that someone brought in the rifle and traded it. Because, wouldn't you know, these guys are in fact traders. Wild concept. Traveling from coast to coast isn't completely unheard of, so it's somewhat feasible a rifle could have found its way to the Mojave. Maybe Mick thought it was a cool piece he's never seen before and added it to the collection. But what do you guys think? Are these two hiding a darker past?
Southeast of Calville Bay, just east of the scavenger platform, lies a half-forgotten mystery. Lake Mead Cave is quietly sitting under the still waters of Lake Mead. The entrance to this place is easy to miss as it's fully underwater, tucked beneath a large rocky ledge. Atop that ledge is a small fishing boat, capsized and partially submerged, its hull cracked like a tombstone. And below on the lake bed, you'll find 4 gore bags, bloody, torn, and jammed full of mutilated body parts, a few frag grenades, and sometimes scattered ammo. They're pressed up against the side of the boat like they were dumped in a hurry. Nearby are scattered suitcases, pre-war money, and broken car parts. It feels like a story happened here. And it likely did, since in real life, even several years after New Vegas was released, human remains were found in Lake Mead, likely stemming from the mob ties of the old city. So what is the point of Lake Mead Cave? In gameplay terms, practically nothing. The cave might tie into Ranger Station Guardian, but aside from that, this location on the old Pip-Boy doesn't really serve a significant purpose, which is a little weird and why the Lake Mead Cave made it on the list in the first place. In the end, Lake Mead Cave is mostly environmental storytelling. Seriously guys, there's literally no quest markers or any true significance to this location in general, so let me know if you find something that says otherwise. If you want to get deep, I guess it's a perfect example of Obsidian's design philosophy, where not every mystery needs a resolution. Sometimes the unanswered questions are what make the world feel real. Anyway, the next time you're skimming across the surface of Lake Mead, take a dive, just don't expect answers. Just murky old bones and a silence that doesn't quite feel empty. This one is infamous to say the least, and although it's deep, the theory has quite the cult following. On the far edge of the Mojave sits a shack with no real purpose. No quests, no enemies, no loot worth mentioning. Just an old trailer and some dusty electronics and a busted radio tower. This is Lone Wolf Radio, and for years it's been the center of one of Fallout's most unsettling myths. According to Fallout urban legend, Lone Wolf Radio wasn't always so lifeless. It was once home to a cut character known simply as the Lone Wolf, a deranged and sadistic radio host broadcasting cryptic, disturbing rants across the Mojave. His show aired at random times during the day, filled with violent ramblings, but it always went silent at 11 p.m. Then, at 3 a.m., the broadcast would return, with the Lone Wolf and a different child every night. Each time, the Lone Wolf would eerily announce, "Everyone is gone. You are all alone. Let it all end," before unaliving the child live on air. Listening in at the right time would trigger a quest called Little Dead Riding Hood, where the courier would have to track down the killer or join him. It was said that joining the Lone Wolf granted a perk allowing you to unalive children in-game, something previously impossible in the Fallout series. Of course, this content never made it to the final build. Supposedly, it was cut due to its disturbing nature and the technical demand of recording dozens of unique script murders. Creepy, right? Well, here's the truth. According to New Vegas' developer Denise McMurray, who designed the location, the real inspiration came from a conspiracy theorist she encountered at the University of Oregon. She imagined what would happen if that guy went from shouting on street corners to broadcasting from a backwater pirate radio tower. The rest? It's all pure fanfiction, a modern creepypasta. Even Josh Sawyer, the game's director, addressed the myth in a Twitch Q&A, saying flat out, "It's completely made up. All that stuff about Lone Wolf Radio is completely made up." To be honest, it's impressive that the theory was so loud at the time that even the game's director caught wind. Still, the location's name and setup draw subtle influence from Wolfman Jack, a real-life underground radio icon from the 1960s who broadcast from Mexico, eluding authorities and sparking countless urban legends. Though, I don't think child unalivings were on his list of notoriety. Whether you believe the myth or not, the silence coming from that lonely tower still sends shivers down the spines of curious couriers everywhere.
Ever stop to wonder who actually runs the Mojave Music Radio in New Vegas? I mean, it's just there, playing old tunes non-stop without a DJ, no announcements, no commentary, just the music from the bygone era. Compared to someone like Mr. New Vegas, MMR feels eerily quiet. There are some theories. Maybe there's some lone survivalist holed up in a hidden bunker or a dusty warehouse, still spinning records or holotapes on pre-war radio gear. No talking or jokes, just music. Maybe the songs are all he has left to remind him of the world before everything went to hell. He doesn't care about ratings or reaching people, it's just for him, and whoever's out there still listening. Some people think this might actually be coming from Lone Wolf Radio, the little trailer you can find out in the desert. The story goes that someone might have lived there, set up a looping playlist of their favorite oldies, and then either died or just walked away from it all. There are scribbles and messages on the wall inside the trailer suggesting that the person who set it up might have done it right before the bombs dropped, and maybe took their own life after everything fell apart. So if that's true, Mojave Music Radio might just be some old playlist on loop, still playing decades later untouched. A piece of the pre-war world that just keeps going even though the world that made it is long gone. Weirdly, it plays the exact same music loop of the Black Mountain broadcast, just without Tabitha interrupting here and there. Maybe that's a connection. Maybe it's just House and he created another station. Currently, we have no solid proof of where it is located and no mentions beyond the broadcast itself. Kinda creeps me out knowing that someone's just out there being quiet behind all of these songs. Here's a theory that's been floating around. What if the fiends aren't fully aware of what they're doing? I mean, yeah, they're dangerous, sadistic, and completely unhinged, but what if part of it comes from the fact that they're basically hallucinating reality 24/7? These guys are constantly on chems that mess with your head, like severely. Psycho, for example, increases aggression and lowers inhibitions. Jet messes with your perception of time. Combine those with long-term use and you've got a brain that's not even close to working right. So what if, in their warped minds, they're not even seeing the wasteland as we do? Now, I'm not saying that they see regular people as literal demons or monsters, because let's be real, some of the stuff they would do gets weird in a whole new way if that were the case. But what maybe they don't see is innocence as innocent. Maybe they just see threats or shadows or something else entirely. They might not see a settler, just a blur of movement and a rush of adrenaline. Not a person begging for their life, but something getting in their way. It doesn't excuse their actions, not by a long shot, but it could explain why they're so relentlessly violent and unhinged. They might be so far gone from reality that they don't know who they're hurting, or they just don't care. Some people even bring up how you can find dead civilians in fiend territory who look like they were absolutely torn apart. There's no context or story, just carnage. That lines up with this theory that their violence isn't always calculated. It's reactive and chaotic, maybe even driven by hallucinations. And let's not forget, a lot of fiends were likely just desperate people from outer Vegas. Poor, addicted, abandoned, and then dragged into this hellish lifestyle by promises of more chems and safety in numbers. So what do you think? Are the fiends fully conscious monsters, or are they victims of their own chem-fueled madness, fighting hallucinations in a world they can't even process anymore? The theory here doesn't have much substance beyond our understanding of addicts in the real world, and it's mostly just circumstantial stuff. But I thought it was still an interesting one to include because it does make some sense. More than likely, there probably are some fiends that are too far gone and more like animals, but there are definitely fiends that still have a sharp mind and know exactly what they're doing.
For many of us, the road is a difficult one, but the path is always there for us to follow, no matter how many times we may fall.
Let's start with the Visionaries. In Fallout 1, we meet Richard Gray, better known as the Master, a brilliant doctor who, after a fateful dip in the FEV vats at Mariposa, transforms into a twisted being with a singular goal: unite the wasteland under the super mutants. Fast forward to Fallout New Vegas, and we have Edward Sallow, the man who becomes Caesar. Using his knowledge as a former follower of the Apocalypse, he captivates tribes in the wasteland, rallying them into the formidable military machine called Caesar's Legion. Both the Master and Caesar shape grand ideologies meant to shape the new world. The Master envisions the Unity, a new evolutionary step for humanity through the forced evolutionary virus, while Caesar pushes to unify the wasteland's tribes under an iron-fisted empire modeled after ancient Rome. But every visionary has a loyal companion or lieutenant at their side, at least for a while. In Fallout 1, Harold was one of the few survivors alongside Richard Gray during the Mariposa expedition. He was a merchant and adventurer who also got exposed to the FEV virus, though his transformation was less extreme. Where Gray evolved into the Master, Harold became a ghoul who spent much of his time wandering and spreading tall tales of what happened. In New Vegas, Joshua Graham, once a quiet Mormon missionary, became Caesar's feared right hand, the first legate of the Legion. He He earned a ruthless reputation on the battlefield, and together, he and Caesar built the Legion from the ground up, forging a path of conquest across the Southwest. Despite their early bonds, both pairs split in a major life-changing way. When the Master embraces the idea of turning Wastelanders into super mutants, Harold sees a nightmare. Though Harold isn't a direct enemy of the Unity, he becomes a living symbol of the horrific risks and moral costs of the Master's vision. Ultimately, Harold remains a ghoul, wandering from place to place, detached from any grand cause. Meanwhile, Caesar blames Joshua Graham for the Legion's failure at the first Battle of Hoover Dam, condemning him to be burned alive and thrown into the Grand Canyon. Against all odds, Graham survives and emerges as the legendary Burned Man. Where Harold mostly drifts, Graham seeks redemption and battles with his own violent past, adopting a new faith-driven approach while remaining forever scarred by Caesar's betrayal. Both Harold and Graham carry physical and psychological wounds that serve as a permanent reminder of what happened. Harold is disfigured by ghoulification. Over time, a little tree named Bob, or Herbert depending on who you ask, grows from his head, marking him as a truly unique figure in the wasteland. Joshua Graham is wrapped in bandages from head to toe, his body burned beyond recognition. He grapples with guilt over his brutal actions as Caesar's legate, searching for some form of spiritual penance in Zion Canyon. These scars speak to the heavy cost of following great and terrible leaders. The last key parallel? Both lieutenants now stand in an ironic defiance to the grand ideologies they were once a part of. Harold was never fully aligned with the Master's unity, but he's an everlasting testament to the beginnings of that experiment, a walking story about what happens when you tamper with nature. Joshua Graham was once the most devout soldier of Caesar's Legion. Now he atones for the violence he committed in Caesar's name, living in defiance of his former master's legacy. Whether through apathy in Harold's case or a spiritual rebirth in Graham's, both characters ultimately reject or outgrow their leader's ideologies. So where do these parallels leave us? They highlight a timeless theme in the Fallout franchise, how one charismatic figure's ambition can profoundly reshape another's life. In each case, these followers live on, scarred physically and mentally as a living history of their leader's rise and fall.
At first glance, he's great. He's cheerful even. He's helpful. He's programmed literally to agree with everything you say. He helps you ditch all the power players, House, NCR, Legion, and he gives you the option to take control of New Vegas for yourself, which is total freedom, right? But then he drops this one line, this one single line at the end of the Independent Vegas ending.
I found some code snippets in one of Mr. House's databanks that will let me, reprogram my personality to be a little more assertive, basically.
And that's where the theory begins. Because the second Yes Man says a little more assertive, fans everywhere suddenly felt a disturbance in the force. That line flips a switch from this robot's just a tool to wait, is this guy going to evolve? Yes Man was programmed by Mr. House's systems, but modified by Benny. The idea was simple, make a version of House's Securitron AI that doesn't say no, and that's it. He's all smiles and no free will. But what's the catch? Well, he's also got adaptive programming. That means he can learn, self-modify, and upgrade. That's pretty dangerous in a post-apocalyptic world, because once a machine starts to improve itself, it's only a matter of time before it starts making decisions. Not taking orders, but giving them. On the surface, the line seems harmless. Yes Man just wants to be more helpful, right? But when you think about it, who's he helpful to? You're not around forever. Maybe your courier dies. Maybe you just vanish into legend like most lone wanderers tend to do. So now you've got a super intelligent, self-upgrading AI running Vegas, managing infrastructure, controlling an army of Securitrons, and possibly reprogramming even more bots. At what point does being helpful turn into making decisions for the greater good, or at least his version of it? It starts with assertive and maybe ends with autonomous. This one little line is vague, it's unsettling, and it wasn't in his programming. If he can make himself assertive, what else can he do? You also never really get the option to shut Yes Man down. He runs Vegas after the game ends, and you give him control, and now he's learning and he's evolving. And worst of all, you trained him to follow your example. If your courier was ruthless, unpredictable, and power hungry, well, maybe Yes Man learned from the best. So is Yes Man evil? Not yet. But that's the terrifying part. He's not evil now, he's just friendly, helpful, and harmless until he's not. Because no one ever expects the smiling assistant to become the final boss. But when that assistant controls an entire city and an army of robots, yeah, you might want to start worrying. The Sierra Madre wasn't just a mysterious casino introduced in Dead Money. It was actually hiding in plain sight before the DLC even launched. There are multiple references to the Sierra Madre throughout the base game, showing that the developers had this haunted resort planned from the beginning. You can actually spot graffiti across the Mojave that hints at it. One of the most notable examples is on the side of the Nevada Highway Patrol Station, where someone scrawled, "I wish I was at the Sierra Madre," complete with a sad face next to it. That writing is there even if you don't have Dead Money installed. Then there's more. On a Corvega billboard near Junction 15, someone spray painted "Gone to Sierra Madre." And on the back of the Lucky 38 billboard near Sloan, another message says, "Left my heart at the Sierra Madre." These aren't one-off mentions, they're deliberate and repeated references placed throughout the wasteland. You'll also find promotional posters in places like the East Pump Station and Monte Carlo Suites. These posters show elegant women lounging with cocktails or draped across luxury furniture, with phrases like "Begin Again" printed on them. Exactly the same branding and messaging used inside the Sierra Madre itself. And those same posters even show up in postcard form next to the terminals and lockers, long before you ever get dragged to the real thing. Even the NCR acknowledges the place. By 2281, they named a military decoration after it, the Star of the Sierra Madre, which President Kimball was planning to award Jeremy Watson during his Hoover Dam visit. All of this shows that the Sierra Madre wasn't some isolated concept dropped in later. It was always part of the world, lurking just beneath the surface and waiting to pull you in. It's a brilliant bit of environmental storytelling that feels like the casino was watching you long before you ever set foot inside. On the surface, the Coyotes is just another NCR side quest. Help the refugees, clean up some corruption, and then you move on. But dig a little deeper and what you find is one of the most unsettling storylines in Fallout New Vegas. And when viewed through a modern lens, it kind of mirrors elements of Epstein Island scandal. You start at the Aerotech office park, where NCR officer Captain Parker is worried about missing refugees. One family, including a little girl with a teddy bear, has vanished without a trace. The trail leads to two shady scavengers, Dermot and St. James. And what you uncover about them isn't just your garden variety exploitation. It suggests something far more sinister. You'll find a ledger with unsettling notes about refugee trafficking. And the most disturbing detail comes from the prostitute Sweetie, who says Dermot props a teddy bear on the bed during his visits. If that doesn't raise red flags, then nothing will. In St. James's room, you'll find the exact teddy bear, suggesting a connection to the missing girl, and confirming that something horrific may have been happening behind closed doors. Players have speculated that this entire quest is a subtle commentary on human trafficking networks, their abuse of power, and the way predators operate under the radar of large institutions. The tone of the quest is intentionally dark. The dialogue is vague but suggestive, and there's no rescue and no closure for the victims. Just a system that failed and two predators who can be executed or arrested depending on your choice. Even more chilling is the fact that nothing else in the game really follows up on this. No named victims, no larger network, just a brief brush with darkness and then total silence. Whether it was intentional or not, the Coyotes stand as a top contender for the most disturbing side quests, and some fans argue it's the game's quiet talk about real-world exploitation buried under NCR red tape.
We warned you at Syracuse, and you persisted. You took advantage of us at New Canaan to drive us out, and like the dogs of Caesar you are, you followed us to Zion. And now you stand on holy ground, a temple to God's glory on earth. The only use for an animal in our temple is sacrifice. Kale wachene conserva o. You understand me, don't you? Don't you?
During the final confrontation in Honest Hearts, Joshua Graham, the legendary Burn Man, shouts this cold line to Salt Upon Wounds. It sounds intense, ancient, and almost biblical, and it's never translated in-game. For years, fans have been trying to decipher its meaning, and while there's no official answers, the theories run deep. The context is clear. Graham is confronting the man who led the Whitelegs against the New Canaanites, his own people. His voice is firm and righteous. But what does the phrase actually mean? Forum users like Alpha Drop have taken a linguistic dive, and here's one of the leading interpretations. The phrase is likely a mashup of several languages, possibly Navajo, Shoshone, Spanish, German, and Old English, reflecting that tribal patchwork of Zion. Kale could be a corruption of Carl, an old Germanic word meaning free man or king. Watcha may derive from watch or witness. Ne is similar to no or not in multiple languages. Conserva resembles conserve or spare in languages like Spanish and Italian. O is likely an exclamation or intensifier. Putting together, the phrase could roughly translate to, as king and witness, none of you will be spared. Or more poetically, as God is my witness, none of you will be saved. Considering Graham's character, a former legate of Caesar and a devout follower of the Old Testament God, it's a fitting battle cry. It fuses his past and present identities, Roman commander, Christian missionary, and tribal war leader. It's also a beautiful example of New Vegas' depth, how a single shouted line that's never explained can carry layers of lore, culture, and meaning.
I hope they never have to find out. Ready, Harry? Yeah. No, wait!
Vault 11 is widely considered one of the darkest and most unforgettable locations in New Vegas. The Vault's experiment forced residents to sacrifice one of their own every year to avoid certain destruction. Eventually, the cycle broke, a civil war erupted, and only 5 people remained. When they finally refused to play along and expected death, the Vault congratulated them. It was all a test of moral resolve. And that's when things got worse. The final audio log in Vault 11 ends with 4 gunshots, and then a pause. You hear a gun fall to the floor, a deep sigh, and footsteps walking away. Only one person survived. Most players never question what happened to them. The logs simply end. The Vault is silent. But deep in the game's files, there's evidence of someone cut from the final build, a fully defined NPC known only as the Vault 11 survivor. He was likely intended to appear after the final log, possibly wandering the wasteland or hiding from it. When spawned through console commands, he appears with the same model as Roy, one of the Vault residents, but no new dialogue or behavior is assigned. His existence raises a lot of questions. Was he meant to be found later in the game? Could he have tied into another quest? Or was he simply meant to be a living embodiment of guilt, wandering the Mojave, carrying the weight of what happened underground? Thematically, he represents something even darker than the Vault's twisted morality experiment. Survivor's guilt in its purest form, the man who didn't pull the trigger, but still lived. He was cut from the final game, but his footsteps echo through that final audio log, and his presence lingers in the files. A ghost in the code, carrying a story that still haunts the silence of Vault 11. Deep in the pages of the Fallout New Vegas Collector's Edition strategy guide, buried in a section most players never even read, there's a strange entry under character archetypes. A name that feels more like a glitch in the Vault Tech database than a real person. Gary 666, the Incandescent Death. He isn't found in the game. He's not referenced by any NPC, and yet there he is, a potential identity for Courier 6. Described as a relentless energy weapons trooper who melts minds into piles of ash and goo. The guide recommends implants for endurance, armor, and regeneration. It also suggests recruiting Raul, Arcade, and Veronica, a companion lineup that covers tech, Brotherhood muscle, and old world intellect. But the name Gary 666 raises more than just eyebrows. It gives memories of Vault 108 from Fallout 3, where the insane, cloning-obsessed Garys ran wild, echoing their name over and over and over. Some fans believe Gary 666 is a reference to the ultimate Gary, the final clone in the Vault-Tec project, a mindless weapon of destruction who somehow escaped the East Coast and found his way back west. It's never confirmed. The entry is very tongue-in-cheek, sure, but in a world like Fallout where clones, cybernetics, and messed up government experiments are commonplace, the idea of a Gary Prime going rogue and turning into a scorched earth courier doesn't seem that far-fetched. Is Gary 666 just a joke for players who love energy weapons and chaos? Or is it a secret Fallout recurring joke? The idea that one Gary lived and he's the one you've been playing all along.
Haha, Gary!
Radroaches in the Mojave are a rare breed, literally. However, on the road to Primm, you can find one killed by a gecko, deliberately. What's interesting is if you have lived in Vegas like I have, roaches are actually quite common. More common than geckos anyway. See, radroaches were the classic starter enemy in Fallout 3, the first thing most players ever fought in Vault 101. They were everywhere, weak, creepy, iconic, But in New Vegas, radroaches are rare, almost extinct in the Mojave. Instead, geckos fill that same role. Early game threats, common in the wild, and tied to that desert setting. This has led to a fascinating theory, that this scripted encounter with a gecko killing a radroach is a symbolic passing of the torch. A sort of environmental storytelling moment, the gecko is the new radroach. But it gets deeper. Some players point out that this scene happens right around the spot on the map where you'd find the town of Roach, Nevada in real life. Roach is a tiny near-forgotten desert settlement just off I-15, just like this lonely bug in the Mojave. Could this be an obscure reference to Roach, Nevada? A digital ghost town marked only by the death of its namesake creature? Maybe. Or maybe it's just a radroach getting unlucky.
Strategic Nuclear Moose. This is hidden west of Sunset Sarsaparilla HQ and tucked away in a forgotten shack at the foot of a cliff. It's one of New Vegas' stranger and most obscure unmarked quests. It starts innocently enough. You stumble across Brewer's Beer bootlegging shack, which looks like any other rundown wasteland home. But inside, there's a locked cellar door. You can find the key to it in the room. Down in the cellar, things get weird. There's a chemistry set, a big book of science, and another key hidden underneath it. The key unlocks a hard-locked gun cabinet, which sits behind a door with a cryptic message. Strategic Nuclear Moose. And God said, let them have beer. A fictional beverage that's a nod to the very real Tactical Nuclear Penguin. A super high ABV beer brewed by Scotland's Brewdog. At the time New Vegas was in development, Tactical Nuclear Penguin was officially the strongest beer in the world, at 32% ABV. Pushing the limits of what beer could even be. So what's the real theory here? Most likely it was just a dev Easter egg celebrating the world-breaking alcohol. Some players have wondered if the quest was supposed to lead to a more unique crafting recipe, a hidden brewer NPC, or even a drunken side effect like Fallout 3 Nuka Grenade. But in the final game, it's just there. No quest markers, no fanfare, just a beer, a joke, and a locked cabinet. In the burning ruins of Nipton in a booby-trapped house just east of the general store, there's a strange little note left behind by a man named Harry Collins. It's titled Declaration of Vital Essence, and it might be one of the most weird and cryptic documents in the entire Mojave. The letter is a paranoid rant where Harry claims that everyone in town, Mayor Stein, new settlers, and curious neighbors are all after his vital essence. He talks about locking it away, defending it, and refusing to let anyone else touch it. The house is filled with traps and explosives, as if Harry truly believed people were coming to take whatever his essence was. Of course, vital essence is never clearly defined in the game. There's no item called that, there's no quest, there's no lore attached to it. It's just a crazy note, a deadly house, and one man's obsession. But here's where the theory comes in. The phrase vital essence is a direct reference to General Jack D. Ripper, a character from Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. In the film, Ripper becomes obsessed with the idea that fluoridation is a communist plot to sap Americans' precious bodily fluids. He uses the term purity of essence to justify nuclear war. So is Harry Collins a wasteland version of Ripper, a deranged prepper who holed up in Nipton wiring his house with traps to protect something that only ever existed in his own mind? Maybe. Or maybe vital essence is a code for something darker, information, tech, or something biological that Harry was really hiding. Players have theorized that Collins' note and behavior hint at early pre-war paranoia, maybe Vault-Tec experimentation, or the psychological decay caused by isolation. The game gives you just enough to wonder and then leaves the rest to your imagination. In the end, all that's clear is this: nobody's getting their hands on Harry's vital essence. Not even you. Hidden within the files of New Vegas is an entire unused floor of Gomorrah, the sleaziest casino on the strip. This extra level is often referred to as the Gomorrah Backrooms. It's fully mapped with rooms clearly meant for customers, complete with beds, loot containers, and access through the in-game elevator system. But in the final game, you can't reach it. That's because the elevator script includes code to access the area, but the variable that would allow you to go there is deliberately set to an impossible value, almost as if the devs wanted it to be there, but didn't want anyone to reach it. Was it cut for time? Or maybe it just felt a little too dark, even for Gomorrah. Even stranger is the presence of a super mutant named Angel in the game files. He's tied to the Omerta faction, and based on his configuration, he was likely meant to be stationed in this area. What was a super mutant doing in a mob-run casino backroom? There's no other mutant in Gomorrah and no reference to Angel in the final game. His existence remains completely unexplained. There's also a placeholder map labeled Gomorrah Top Floor. which is visually and structurally unlike any other parts of the casino. It's sparse, sterile, almost unfinished, and some believe it may have been part of a cut quest or even a dark narrative arc involving human trafficking or something even more twisted. Even Joanna, the dancer tied to the only real emotional story in Gomorrah, has early debugged dialogue and rewritten quest paths that may have once led deeper into this area. To top it off, Gomorrah is consistently misspelled as Gomorrah in the game's internal files. Maybe it's just a typo, or maybe just another sign that the whole place was thrown together, changed, and censored as the game neared completion. So what was the point of the Gomorrah backrooms? Were they just flavor, or was something more sinister meant to happen behind those locked elevator doors?
Just outside the Ultra Luxe near the Las Vegas Boulevard station, you'll find a strange note. At first glance, it reads like a review from some pre-war food critic. It praises the Ultra Luxe as a last bastion of real fine dining in a crazed hellscape with glowing descriptions of gourmet food, luxury, and exclusivity. But if you know anything about the Ultra Luxe, you know what's really on the menu. See, the White Glove Society who run the Ultra Luxe are heavily implied and eventually confirmed to be secretive cannibals, struggling to suppress their more uncivilized appetites. And that's where this theory kicks in. This note isn't a restaurant review, it's a recruitment pitch for new members, or a baited trap for their next unlucky guest. Think about it. The note smells of elitism, mocking poor farmers and Gomorrah sex workers as beneath the reader. It lures the right kind of ego, someone who sees themselves as above the filth of the wasteland. It even ends with a call to urgency. Dally not, a sumptuous feast awaits. Sounds fancy, right? Or maybe it's just a clever way to lure someone right into the kitchen as the main course. Some players believe this note is tied to the internal recruitment process of the White Glove Society. Others think it's the equivalent of an apocalyptic honeypot. A honey dick, if you will, designed to flatter the vain and then quietly carve them up out back. Outside the New Vegas Medical Clinic, there's a strange little symbol most players never notice. It doesn't look like graffiti or a faction tag, and that's because it's not. It's a piece of something much older and more cryptic. Hobo code. Back during the Great Depression, migrant workers, often referred to as hobos, used a secret visual language to survive. They'd mark fences, doorways, trees, or rail posts with simple chalk symbols to warn others about dangers or to signal things like "a kind woman lives here" or "you can get medical help inside." And incredibly, Fallout New Vegas includes these symbols, though most of them were never used in the game. The symbol outside the medical clinic, for instance, is a traditional hobo code marking for "Doctor Here." And if you use console commands, specifically placeatme 000 FD2D7, you can actually spawn that symbol on any wall you want. Even deeper in the files are more unused hobo code assets, quietly tucked away, never placed in the Mojave by default. This discovery led to fan creations like the mod Hobo Code of the Mojave, which restores and scatters these symbols across the game, turning the wasteland into a giant cryptic guide for those who know what to look for. So what was the original plan? Was the player supposed to learn to read these symbols, perhaps to track safe houses, hidden loot, or story hints? Or were they just environmental flavor that got left behind? Either way, it fits the world of New Vegas perfectly. A harsh post-collapse society where people once again rely on coded signs etched in dust and ruin to survive.
Let's talk about one of the creepiest characters in Fallout you've never actually met. A figure known only as the Principal. He's not a boss, he's not in any cutscene, he doesn't have a model, a voice, or even a quest tied to his name. But if you dig into the lore during Honest Hearts, you'll find him. And what you learn is haunting. In the year 2123, 24 children escaped from a mysterious place known only as the School. No one knows exactly what it was. A vault, a re-education facility, maybe a failed pre-war institution warped by the wasteland. But what we do know is this: it was bad enough that the kids risked everything to flee into the wilds of Zion Canyon. And wherever they came from, they brought with them stories. Not of super mutants and raiders, but a man known as the Principal. To the children, he wasn't just a leader, he was a boogeyman. A figure so terrifying that they would tell the younger ones, if you don't behave, the Principal will come and get you. That's the level of fear this guy instilled in them. Randall Clark, the legendary survivalist of Zion, overheard the kids' stories about this figure while secretly watching over them. And in his journal he writes, 24 of them, half boys, half girls. Youngest is 8 maybe, oldest 13 to 14. Dirty and scrawny, been on foot a long time. Children's crusade. Struck camp on nearly the same spot as Los Mexicanos, 30 years and a lifetime ago. I've spent 2 nights listening to them. English literate. One of them reads stories while the little ones fall asleep. They escape some place called the school, but can't figure out where it was. When they want a little one to behave, they tell him to stop or the principal will get you. Principal better not show up or I'll blow his goddamn head off. I can still shoot straight. Clark was no stranger to death. He fought through the Great War, survived years alone, and faced everything from raiders to starvation. So when a hardened, broken man like him reacts that way, you know this principal guy must have been truly horrifying. Now, after Old World Blues came out, some fans thought they'd cracked the case. They pointed to Dr. Boris and the X8 test facility, which ran brutal experiments on school children before the war. It fit the term the school. The abuse and the twisted science all lined up. Could Boris have been the principal? Sadly, no. Fallout writer Chris Avalon stepped in and confirmed on social media that it wasn't the case. Though in his words, it would have been cool. So as of now, the principal truly remains unknown. So the next time you're wandering Zion, remember somewhere out there, 24 children once ran from a place so terrible that a man with no name became their nightmare. The principal. No face, no voice, just fear. I'll make this one quick because there's not really much here besides a singular holotape. But yes, there are snuff tapes in Fallout New Vegas. Sort of. Obviously, it's not something you can watch in the game. It's actually used as part of a plotline for the Omertas during the quest How Little We Know. Basically, you find them and use them for blackmail against Clandon. The tape's transcripts go like this. These tapes contain horrific sounds of murder and violence. You hear Clandon engaging in violence with women, and then hear the sounds of visceral and violent being carried out. Sorry, I had to not say and blur some specific things because that's just how YouTube works. But I'm sure you get the picture. It's pretty dark for even Fallout standards. You'd be hard pressed to find something else worse in the game, except for maybe the coyotes, which we covered in one of the other icebergs. It's a wild thing to stumble across and read, and I don't think a lot of people ever actually end up seeing it.
Some players genuinely believe the courier from Fallout New Vegas is the Lone Wanderer from Fallout 3, not a descendant and not a spiritual successor, but the same person. And here's the argument. Fallout New Vegas takes place only a few years after Fallout 3. The Lone Wanderer has lost everything. His father, his childhood home in Vault 101, his connections. Sure, he saved the capital Wasteland and became the so-called hero of the Wastes. But emotionally, it was hollow, maybe even lonely. The Lone Wanderer has no ties left. So what does a grief-stricken hero do? He leaves and heads west and tries to start over. He ditches the Pip-Boy, takes up menial work as a courier, and slowly lets go of who he used to be. That Pip-Boy was a constant reminder of his past, and without it, he could become someone new. The final nail in the coffin would be a bullet to the brain in the Mojave, which is oddly convenient, right? I mean, a total memory reset is a great alibi. And just like that, the Lone Wanderer becomes the courier, another drifter trying to find meaning in the chaos of the wasteland. A new beginning and a new legend is born. But here's the counterpoint, and it's a strong one. The courier doesn't actually have amnesia. That's a common misconception. He remembers his past to different degrees as the courier mentions places like Montana and makes offhand remarks about jobs he's done. Oh, and not to mention that he has a long-standing rivalry with this guy that predates the events of the game. As for the Divide, he doesn't remember it because it was just another delivery hub, not because his brain got wiped like some old hard drive. And how about that Pip-Boy? If the courier was the Lone Wanderer, where's his wrist-mounted legacy? The device that carried Project Parity logs, vault tech schematics, and records of every mutant he vaporized in DC. It's gone, and not even mentioned, and that thing's not exactly easy to misplace. Plus, New Vegas lets you customize the courier's age. If you want to be 45 or 35, then go for it. But the Lone Wanderer was technically born in 2258, making him 19 in Fallout 3 and only 22 by the time New Vegas rolls around. Not exactly a seasoned courier with a storied past. Finally, there's the Vault 13 Canteen. That's the nod Obsidian gave us, not to Fallout 3, but to Fallout 1 and 2. The implication here, allegedly, is that the courier is more likely descended from the Vault Dweller or Chosen One, not the Lone Wanderer. But what do you think? Is that a stretch? So while it's a poetic theory, the idea of a broken hero reinventing himself in a new land, the evidence just doesn't line up. Still, in the Fallout universe, identity is always a little fluid, and sometimes the myths we tell ourselves are more powerful than the truth. I wish we could play the Big Iron ballad that tells a story of an Arizona Ranger's confrontation with a notorious outlaw named Texas Red, but I also don't want to get a copyright strike. The song describes a tense showdown in a specific town where the Ranger, armed with his Big Iron, which is a large revolver, faces off against the feared Texas Red. Now, the rumor goes that Big Iron was written for New Vegas, but a basic history lesson would show that Big Iron was literally made before 1960 on an album called Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs. With an album with a name such as that, I don't think we can be too surprised to find one of its songs make its way into the game. So while Big Iron was not written specifically for Fallout New Vegas because it predates the game by half a century, its inclusion in the game significantly contributed to its resurgence in popularity and cemented its status as a memorable, iconic Western song. I think we can put this rumor to rest, but I will leave us with a fun fact. An additional song was supposed to be played on Radio New Vegas and Mojave Music Radio, but was never added. So Big Iron was unintentionally bugged to play 2 more times than any other song, and it can even be played twice on the radio in a row. It's fine by me though because Big Iron is goated. Well, if you made it this far, hopefully you learned a few things along the way with us. I know the TV show isn't for everyone, but personally, I just love the Fallout universe. So I hope we helped add a bit more color to New Vegas for you, whether you're a fan of the games or both the games and show. Also, let us know if we missed anything in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you join the Discord, follow us on TikTok and Twitter with the links in the description. And remember, enjoyed time is never wasted time, and we'll see you in the next.